All right, I'd like to call to order the regular meeting of the Solvang City Council, July 27th, 2020, 6:30 p.m. Can we get a roll call?
Mayor Protem Clark,
Yes, here.
Councilmember DeJarnius,
Here.
Councilmember Johnson,
Here.
Councilmember Wade, here, Mayor Toussaint,
Here.
all present.
Robert, you want to lead us in the pledge?
Yes, please stand and place your right hand over your heart. Repeat after me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
I enjoyed when you were speaking over the Zoom. It was this echo.
All right, the first item on tonight is public communications, written or verbal. We also have the sheriff contract model presentation. I'll ask that we start with the sheriff contract model presentation, and then we'll read out the criteria for public comment and take public comment.
Okay, so we have our lieutenant or chief of police, Jeff Green, here with us in person. We have a couple of people from the sheriff's department should be online on Zoom with us. We have Christy Velasco, I see her here, and then a lieutenant as well, who can unmute themselves when they're ready to jump in.
Good evening. So City Manager Bradford asked us to come forward and ask some or answer some questions you guys might have about the current contract and DSU model that you have with the Sheriff's Office. So we were under the impression we were going to be asked some questions. We did not put together a full presentation of the DSU model, so we're prepared to answer questions if you have them.
Maybe we should continue this one because I think we're asking for more of a presentation on just the funding for the kind of the valley overall. You know, we hold a contract. Bealton holds a contract. I believe the Chumash Casino owns a contract, and then we have the unincorporated area. So, and then also we have the change in the funding model from whatever the prior version was to this new full cost recovery model. So I think we were just trying to understand the structure of all that. If there's any other guidance any council member wants to give into that, but it might be more appropriate to return when they're ready with that.
So you were looking for more of a grandiose overview of the whole thing?
Yeah.
Okay. We
And then, of course, you know, dive down to, okay, then what do we have here in Solvang? What are we specifically paying for? And
My issue was, is there a possibility of some kind of consolidation between the other departments? Certainly, I'm not expecting that to happen anytime soon. But for example, what if we could consolidate Bealton and Solvang into one substation, right? What would that look like? Is it even possible?
I think that would be something that we could run through with the city manager and discuss through our contract bureau.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, as we, as a city, are trying to consolidate and reduce our overhead and our expenses out of necessity, right? We were wondering if we could do the same thing with some of the contracts. And this is probably, it is the biggest contract that the city has. So if there's a way to consolidate those expenses with other communities, share that overhead with other communities, perhaps it would work to your benefit as well as our own.
So council member, if I can ask, are you looking more of the idea of some form of a negotiation for the future of changing things up?
I'm certainly looking to explore the idea. Okay. I'm not sure if we're ready to negotiate anything.
Well, and again, we can work through, our contract law bureau can work through City Manager Bradford and talk about what some of those might be.
What that might look like, exactly.
I do understand, and I think it's beneficial for you to understand that the Solvang City as a municipality, you know, should have 24/7 coverage, at least the one which you do have. Same as Bealton. So your contracts are similar there, with the exception that they have some menu items that they pay extra for. And if there's anything I can answer tonight for you to help you guys understand that, I'm more than happy to kind of give you a brief overview. Just depends on how far down in the weeds you guys want to go with your questions. So
I think it might be helpful to at least, my understanding was that you or the your contracts division were prepared to give kind of a brief overview of the changes with the latest contract and how that model works now and sort of the thought behind that.
So why don't I invite Christy Velasco? She's our financial, one of our financial officers to come on, and she can kind of present you what she's put together for you to maybe help understand some of the stuff that you have comparatively with the other cities.
Okay.
How's that sound?
And are there?
I have a question.
Okay.
I'll wait till you're done because it's
kind of off to the side, but it's for the benefit of the residents, but go ahead.
I was actually just asking if any council members have any other questions that they.
Yeah, I think that sounds great. I think really I would like the numbers attached to the services, and I think she'll be able to provide that, so that's what we're looking for.
Okay.
Can you briefly explain, the other day, for example, you had a training exercise down by the castle on the way out on towards Buellton. There was a helicopter overhead, and there were about 6 or 7 patrol cars. And people are asking me, I didn't know that Solvang had that many sheriffs. Can you explain who's where, in what division, and how that all comes together? Why we'll see 6 police cars or 6 sheriff's vehicles one given time? Where are they coming from? How many are here? How many are in Buellton, et cetera? Can you just briefly?
I can definitely do that, and that's exactly what we're talking about. So, as you know, you guys contract and you have one 24/7 person, deputy here. Buellton also has one. Now, the Chumash, they have agreed to pay in addition to one because they don't have to. They're not a municipality at all. They do that because they want to have more coverage in their particular area and to the community of San Ynez. So they pay for a deputy as well. And then you have your county deputy. So there's 4. Plus you generally have a senior deputy and a sergeant on duty. So that's a total of 6 that are on duty in this particular area any given time, 24/7.
Okay, so 24/7, there are 6 officers in between Buellton and here that can respond to any event.
Correct.
Okay, got
And
it.
that's one of the beauties of your model is that if for any reason your deputy in Buellton, say he makes an arrest, okay? I'm sorry, Solvang, he makes an arrest. I just had an incident in Buellton, that's why it's in my head, so I'll use an example. That deputy is now on his way to Goleta to book the suspect, okay? Buellton City is not uncovered right now, okay? Just because he's down there, the 40 minutes down and however long it takes him to book the suspect and then the 40 minutes back, they're covered. We slide a person over and that city area is covered, just like with you. And that's the beauty of the DSU model is that you guys are covered 24/7. If someone calls in sick, you're covered. So,
And for example, I know that every person that's detained or arrested heads down to Goleta. If, like on a Saturday night, if you arrest 3 people in 3 different locations, that's 3 officers that are driving to Goleta, right?
if they were all at the same time, potentially.
Uh-huh, okay.
But it's scalable. I guess what he's saying is they would just call in new deputies to add to it.
Yeah.
Mhm. And pay overtime.
And mind you, we do have the additional, we're a full county. If we have to move, doing that
Right.
to make sure that there's coverage where it's needed. And we do that on major incidents. So one of the models, as you were talking about, Mayor, maybe with some of the questions on the overhead discussion, is that it's built in where it came from the auditor's office, certain built-in numbers regarding how much you guys and Buellton would be paying for, because you have a 24/7 deputy, but that deputy comes with a big support group, right? It comes with some detective services, which, by the way, is covered through narcotic services, forensic services. You guys are paying for the supervisors, right? Part of my salary, part of me being here, a small part of a commander being here available to you. But these services you're paying for on an overhead, or in all-inclusive, covers that. If you have something like we had the shooting in, I believe, in Solvang on Fjord, you had a ton of the county resources here. That's part of the deal. And that's no additional cost to you. We came in and we had tons of detectives that came in along with the supervisors and all the stuff that went in on that. Those deputies that were involved, some of them were from this area, they get put out on admin leave. We have other deputies that come in to patrol your city while they're out, while the investigation's continuing. That's just one example of a major investigation that you guys, that's inclusive in your contract. So.
So incident response based, you can draw up, or, off the pool,
Mhm.
to address things. And then obviously if we have a larger incident, we draw off the county,
Correct.
pool. And then my guess would be just be if our demand goes past what we're paying in our contract, we have to pay some overtime or eventually readdress needing, to procure further support.
My understanding, Christy, are you online?
Can we?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
So Christy, we go by hours only, right?
Okay. Uh, we do. So exactly as hours used exceed what is purchased, then we basically would charge you the additional hours in the true up, which is done 2 years later.
Any other questions?
Yeah, actually, this is something that Robert even brought up, I guess, a couple of sessions ago. What is your feeling on smart city surveillance? Are you familiar with this idea? We have antennas, I guess, on top of lampposts, cameras on top of lampposts, and they're able to provide an additional measure of coverage. Obviously, you can't be this done very successfully in other cities across California and across the country. I'm not trying to create a surveillance state. That's not my point. The idea is, can we leverage some of these technologies and tools to help you guys do your job more cost effectively?
Can I add to that, Chris? I'm a proponent, and I've told some people, lots of people, that I would like to get cameras on Alisal, Atterdag, and Copenhagen Street and Mission if we can. And Zena knows about this, and we'd like to talk about it in the next budget cycle. I've also heard people asking for the license plate readers as you're on the east and the west entrances to town. It's a lot more expensive, and it's a lot more of a political hot button issue. That's further down the road, but I would like to get started as soon as we possibly can on the lights to assist you guys for what you have to do.
I appreciate that, and I think City Manager Bradford and I will be talking and looking into that further.
Okay.
Well, I'm curious because I think it dovetails nicely with our desire to find out how many tourists are actually coming to our town. We know that 20 to 25,000 cars on average were passing through our town. How many of them are actually stopping?
It was proposed to be by a law enforcement officer that this is a double, you kill two birds with one stone.
Twofer, right?
Horrible analogy, but you can gauge tourism numbers off those two.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, which people would have an issue with, but it's a delicate matter.
Well, there's the city of West Hollywood, and this is where I got the idea back in January of 2019. They shared with us the technology that they were using, and they had done some test work with a provider of this technology. And it helped them both, because again, in their case, they had like 75,000 people going through their town. And then they also had issues related to traffic violations and things like that. And they were showing us how they can track the cars and the license plates and the instances of violations in real time, right? And if somebody, like you said, if there was a crime in real time in one part of town, they could track the car as it left town. They know exactly what's going on.
Well, wasn't it a license plate reader that caught that vehicle that we had the big response on Fjord in 2017?
No, I think that one was due to an Amber Alert, if I remember right.
Okay.
Somebody recognized that plate and called it in, if I remember correctly.
God bless them.
So,
Perhaps this is an area we can explore.
I'd like to.
Yeah.
but more than happy to go over anything further with the contract if there's any other questions on it, or if you would rather defer it and maybe we can work through City Manager Bradford, put together the questions and put something more formal together. I mean,
So is there an interest in Christy presenting the cost model, doing a brief presentation, and then we can see if
Yeah,
there's
that's
any
fine.
additional questions and
I would
back to the more
support that, yeah.
conversation. Christy?
Yes, hello. So in regards to a cost model, that's actually developed by our auditor controller. I do actually have the rate sheet that they provided, so if you wanted to kind of go over that information, I would think that would be, as far as the development process and things like that, we would probably want to do that at a later date so we can get them on board with that. But as far as giving you a breakdown of the rate sheet for fiscal year 2021, I have that information here that I can go ahead and provide if you'd like to look that over, and I can answer any questions you have off of that.
Yeah, if you can walk us through that, that would be helpful first step.
Okay, can I go ahead and share my screen?
Yes. Jeremy, can we share screen? Christy, are you able to share your screen? There should be a button on your...
I tried to, yeah. I tried that. It's actually telling me that it's disabled.
Okay. Give me just 1 second.
Okay, no problem.
Captain, can I ask one more question? With all this, the environment we've been in the last few months, what kind of response are you getting from the residents about just you guys? And do you talk to more residents? Are you getting a lot of support from the residents?
We are indeed. We're getting positive feedback from the vast majority of people.
Wonderful.
Yeah, so, and we understand that we live in a very good county, and we're supported well, and we believe that we give a very good service to the county, regardless of who it is. So, I think it's one of those things where, you know, you give what you get, and we give back as much as we can, and we treat everyone, you know, kindly, and we appreciate everyone, and I think that's coming back to us, so it's good for us to see that.
That's really cool.
What are the most common inquiries from the residents right now in Solvang?
Well,
I imagine things kind of go in waves, especially like even with the COVID thing going on. That probably generates a
correct.
lot of, you know.
a lot of things that I see are people just in general have a lot of questions of, you know, pertaining and around, revolving around COVID, businesses, stuff like that. I think that, you know, it's a very tumultuous time for our country right now. There's a lot going on. I have no other way of wording that any better than we have a lot going on. And I think there's just a lot that people are trying to deal with and navigate through, understand, work with, and obviously there's the COVID crunch on top of that. So it creates a lot of stress. So, but overall, I think that people they're doing well. We appreciate, you know, their support, and we appreciate the whole opportunity to be here in a tough time and give service to them.
Have you had pressure from the county on enforcing guidelines and mandates from the state on masks and social distancing and all that?
The county is working through COVID as far as the regulations and what they're going to, you know, perceive as going forward. We've still been very much on an education stance of trying to get people to wear their masks, work with that, understand the importance of it and do it. The businesses in enforcing certain things that they can enforce up to the point that they can. And it's just, again, it's a tough time. There's changes quite frequently that cause a lot of confusion too, that we're trying to help people understand.
Understatement.
So, yeah. So it would be hard to say we want to go after somebody if they're not purposely trying to do anything wrong.
Understood.
Okay.
Thank you for being here. Before we would get into any numbers on the suggestions for surveillance cameras on the various streets that I believe Mr. Clark thought would be good, or Mr. DeJournas regarding smart cities, I'm just speaking from a platform of Human Rights Watch. We really do need to have a global public right for privacy. So that would not be something that I would be in favor of. I don't think that we need to have Big Brother filming us as we are going around town.
However, if you look at what's going on around the country right now, when you look at Chicago and New York, those videos have been critical in apprehending suspects and putting those videos. I know Chicago does it a lot, puts out videos for the general community to ask for assistance in identifying people that the police want to talk to. And I would hope that it solves more crimes than toes that it steps on. But I understand what you're saying.
It's a very deep conversation to have, but I don't think it's something that's necessary in our city of Solvang.
Point taken.
Well, that's the whole point of communication and dialogue with the community. I think you bring a good point, one that I held as well for the longest time. Unfortunately, when you have 2 to 3 million visitors passing through your community, you open yourselves up to a lot of potential problems. We've been lucky, I think, very fortunate that we haven't had any serious instances or incidents regarding, you know, well, actually we have had bank robberies and break-ins and things like this. Could we have avoided them if we had the cameras? I don't know. That's something that we could certainly look into. That's the idea of exploring this and having a community-wide dialogue. And hopefully over some period of town halls or some period of time in several town halls, we can get to a solution that might make sense. Maybe there's no solution. Maybe we decide to walk away at this time. But that's really what we're here for, is to help lead that kind of dialogue with the community. Also, unfortunately, once you decide to drive on county and state roads, you forfeit your rights. The state owns those roads. And if they decide that they want to put the cameras up and watch, we can't stop that. In the city of West Hollywood, they limited their attention to just the license plates. And they could look at the make and model of the car, but they weren't gonna, they didn't go into pictures of the actual driver, right? So that's how they handled it. But again, this is for, I think, later discussion.
Does anybody still use red light cameras?
That's another good example, yeah.
Do you know of any cities that are still using red
I
light
think most
cameras?
of them have gotten rid of them.
Yeah.
Are you ready for the financial model portion? Oh, okay.
Yes, are you able to see my screen?
We
had
have just one more
thing
comment.
from Council Member Waite.
Just one more very quick comment, just regarding surveillance cameras.
No problem.
And although, yes, they have been used for apprehending individuals that have caused or causing crimes during these times, there's also the possibility that these type of surveillance cameras can be used to target individuals that may or may not have been involved in criminal activity, but yet they may be questioned simply because their picture is shown publicly. So that is why I am very much against having public surveillance for private citizens.
Financial model?
Go ahead, Christy.
Hello. So the screen that I'm able to share here shows the cost rate that is provided to us by the auditor controller. If you take a look at it, it's kind of set up in the way a receipt would be set up. The patrol cost on the left lists basically what the item is, whereas the hourly rate gives the total cost for that hour. So if you were to scroll down to the bottom and look in the area where it says
Would you-
hourly contract rate,
Would you mind
you'll see
zooming?
that.
Would you mind zooming on your page just so it's a little easier for people to see?
Yes. Does that work?
Yeah, a little bigger. Oh, that's great right there.
Okay. So I'll go ahead
That
and
may-
see if I can.
I think it's
Move
too
this
much,
over here.
just a little.
Back,
Even
back
I
up
can see
one,
that.
Christy. There you go.
There we go. Okay. All right. Hopefully that works. So all the costs basically are listed here on the left-hand side. I'm not too sure. Are you able to see my mouse,
Yes.
Yes.
the cursor? Okay. Down here is where you get the final hourly rate, the $194.50, and that is essentially what the hourly cost of a DSSU is. So the way that the cost is drawn up is getting the hourly rate of this $194.50 and multiplying it by the amount of hours needed for the city. Now, last year, the amount of hours needed for the city was 8,760 hours, and that was just an estimate that the auditor controller came up with using 24 hours a day times 365 days a year. Now, this 8,889 number that you see up here includes that difference, that offset number, where the city used additional hours that were given to them by assists by the unincorporated vehicle, and those are basically added into this cost to give you the total contract cost of, there you go, you got the 1.8 million. So that's where that cost comes from, and if you wanted to take a look, these are how the costs basically are funneled. Here we go. So hourly rate, so again, these are all pieces of that 194.50. I know that Lieutenant Green had talked about patrol support, so these are the costs that you're paying for each of these positions.
I'm sorry, was that for 2019? That 1.8, 1.9 million?
These are the numbers for this number here, this 1.8 number. This is actually the cost for 2021.
So that's significantly reduced from the budgeted amount of roughly 2.2 million.
Well, you.
No, our
oh,
budget amount was 1.8 after we
Yeah.
reduced the other contract for
CRD.
The
CRD.
menu item, right?
Oh, after you reduced it by, okay, that's for that.
Plus, we had a coupon.
Yep, that coupon works. So this is essentially how the cost is made up. Now, the auditor controller actually does the full calculation. What the Contract Service Bureau does is we provide information on what costs are allowable and not allowable. An example of that would be a natural disaster or a homicide, cases that are bigger kind of load. Those would be omitted, so the time wouldn't get counted into your hours purchased. And that goes for all the contract cities. So that's, here you'll see a menu item. There's actually a cost there, which is basically a true up from the CRD position that you had. I guess the cost came in a little bit under there. So there was actually a true up of $12,000 that was owed to true up his costs. But down here is essentially where you're going to see your overall cost at 194 times the amount of hours, which gives you your base for the DSSU, and then your additional cost here. So the DSU admin fee is going to be the fee that is provided for myself and my lieutenant in our Contract Service Bureau.
Lasco, can we show them the city contract costs comparison?
Yeah, I actually created, let me go and pull that up here. Give me one moment here. There we go. Let me go ahead and shrink that down here. Is this what you were talking about?
No, the blue.
Jeff, is this what you were referring to?
The blue one, the blue field one with.
Blue, okay. Here we go. Yeah, so here we go. So this is the contract cost for the 4 contract cities for the year 2021. On the top, you'll see the total contract costs. It's pretty self-explanatory, but if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer those.
I think if you'll see this here, it'll see that you have your 1.8 there. Buellton's a little bit higher, but Buellton also pays for a menu item of the motor that they utilize. Obviously, Carpa's higher. They pay for more positions, along with Goleta being the highest because it pays for more positions on top of motor units.
What's the large increase item just on Buellton alone?
If I remember,
On Buellton, the large increase, what that is, I'm sorry, did you want to go ahead?
no, go ahead, Velasco, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. That increase is actually due to last year, the Solvang CRD was actually billed separately. It was basically at a reduced fee as the second year of the, I believe that there was let me look on here. It was a 2-year, let me look on here. So the county, when they initially started doing the DSSU model, we basically gave the city of Buellton and the city of Solvang a cut in costs just to go ahead and help kind of get you to where we needed to be. What we did was there was, I believe, a 10% decrease in the year 18-19, and then 19-20 showed that the cost was dramatically higher. So what we did was we took the CRD position and removed that from the DSSU model as a menu item, and then charged you the actual cost plus an indirect cost rate, which ended up charging a total of about $172,000 to the city of Solvang. You since removed that position. The city of Buellton, however, did not remove their menu item. So what we did is we added that back into the DSSU model. So that's where that additional, that $335,000 increase is from. It's from that position being added as opposed to being charged separately. Does that make sense? I'm sorry if it's a little confusing.
And did you have anything that that shows the? I mean, I appreciate this here, but compares Buellton, Solvang, Carpinteria, and Goleta together. But do we have anything that shows Buellton, Solvang, Valley Unincorporated here, and the Chumash Casino funding?
So,
Like basically like putting the full pie together for the Valley here?
Christy, you want to answer, or I will?
Yeah. Actually, that information I don't have put together. I was just looking at the actual contract costs. If you're wanting to get something like that, I could probably go in and get something like that together for you for if you have your next meeting, something like that. The costs are a little bit different with the unincorporated area. I don't know if Jeff, if you want to talk about how that's monitored, but on our end, we don't actually track the unincorporated area just because it's not a contract city, so it's handled a little differently. And I think the Chumash is the same way.
And that's what I was mentioning in the beginning, talking about how as a municipality, that's why we gave you those 4 comparisons as the 4 municipalities that we contract with. The county, as you know, unincorporated, it doesn't have to supply a patrol service. We do in this county. Some counties deplete their patrol services at different times, different, hours, variances and whatnot. We try to keep ours the same so that we're staying out there as much as possible, helping to keep the community safe. But as far as tracking it goes, it's not as easy for her to do that because we don't contract to San Ynez. We are Santa Barbara County. So the unincorporated areas, we don't have it broken down quite that way. Now, as a comparison, what I can give you is, as I was trying to think, how can I help explain this? And again, going back to the Chumash, they don't have to contract and put out extra deputies, but they do. They pay for that. So theirs is not a DSU model. It's just straight up ours because they don't have to do. Now, what I did was I looked at as the lieutenant in charge of the San Ynez Valley Station, I looked at the budgets that I have that I can work with, training, hours, supplies, et cetera, have you. And I can tell you that Buellton and Solvang are pretty much the same, and my San Ynez one is a little bit higher by about 50 grand.
Do you keep records of what percentage of officers' time is spent at the casino versus other areas, or how many calls you get from the casino on a weekly basis?
We do track calls for service. I don't know if we break it all the way down to hours. Christy, do you know that one?
Is it a lot? I mean, not exact
That has
numbers.
not. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just asking if it's a fair amount of time or not much. The calls to the casino.
I would have to get back with you on that
That
answer.
information, Jeff, do you happen to have the calls for
I know they have their own security,
Right.
and I know that at times you need to go over there. I'm just curious.
Yeah, we do have the calls for service when we go over there, but I did not prepare that. I didn't print that out, and I don't know it off the top
I didn't
of my head
expect
right
it to. I was just curious.
now. Yeah, but we do track it.
Yeah, the Contract Service Bureau does not track the Chumash Casino or the unincorporated areas as of right now. Our plan is to hopefully in the near future work with our computer engineer to go ahead and be able to monitor that information and provide that to the cities as well. This is actually going to be our 3rd fiscal year going with this model, so we're still relatively new, and we're hoping to be able to provide that information because I know that is something that people want to know.
Are there any other questions? No? Thank you.
Okay.
With that, we'll take public comment on this particular item here. I'll start with Hank Homburg, looks like. Oh, and can I get the criteria written out for public comment?
The council welcomes your input. State law does not allow the council to discuss or take action on issues not on the agenda, except that members of the council or staff may briefly respond to statements made or questions proposed by persons exercising their public testimony rights. Staff may be asked to follow up on such items. We'll take public comment in person first.
Hank Homburg.
Thanks, Chief.
Good evening, Council. Hank Homburg. Thanks for listening for me tonight. Concerning the Sheriff's Department, policing is going to have to be something that's probably going to be approached a little bit differently, just with everything going on, but mostly with costs. Costs are crazy. So it was mentioned about smart cities, and I think it would definitely behoove Solvang to be a smart city for more reasons than just license plates, surveillance. And with regard to what Councilmember Waite said, it doesn't take pictures of the occupants in the car. It simply takes pictures of the license plate gives the color and make of the car, and that's it. There's no, you can't see if your boyfriend's in the car with you or whatever. So it's strictly from a law enforcement perspective, an effective way to find out what's going on if there is a problem. If there's no problem, there's no reason to check it. But if there's, like, we've had a lot of break-ins in neighborhoods at night, vehicle break-ins, well, I would guess that there's probably only 50 cars driving around at 3 in the morning in our neighborhoods. And that would allow those officers to see who is driving around the neighborhood and breaking into cars. So most of them are from out of the area, from what I understand. So anyway, so with regard to smart cities, I think that's a really viable option for us as far as crime prevention. It's also a good option for parking enforcement. If we ever go to paid parking, like every other tourist city in the state of California, who makes a significant revenue on paid parking, which for whatever reason, I don't know why we don't have that. And then with regard to Lieutenant Green's presentation, I understand mutual aid, automatic aid with Sheriff's Department personnel from other areas, but we also have CHP here as automatic aid if something really hits the fan. So I'm not concerned about that. What I'm concerned about, and most residents are, is the traffic situation here in Solvang. We have zero enforcement, basically. I called the Sheriff's Department last year, and Buellton, during the same time period, had 636 traffic violations. Solvang had 52. So I understand they have a motor, and it would be great if we took that money that we saved from the community service deputy and put some of that money into possibly hiring an overtime motor officer from Buellton or Goleta or wherever they come from, because I'm sure they want to work overtime, to come up here and contract with our city maybe 2 days a week, maybe 1 day a week, I don't know. But at least people would know that we do have traffic enforcement, because right now there's no traffic enforcement, zero, zippo, nothing. So, and if I'm wrong, Lieutenant Green, please feel free to step in, but very rarely do we have any traffic enforcement in the city of Solvang. So that's my points I'd like to make, and if there's any way we can get a motor to come here part-time, it would be fantastic. I've talked to a motor officer before, and he said you would probably have to maybe even look into purchasing a motorcycle if we had a full-time motor cop here. But I don't think we need a 1200 BMW RT. I think we could do with a 650 Enduro or a 650, because no one's going 120 miles an hour through Solvang. So that's another issue. But anyway, I would love to see a motor cop here part-time, and I'm speaking for a lot of residents that live in my neighborhood, in my area. Chalk Hill's a virtual freeway. I've never seen any traffic enforcement from CHP or sheriffs. And even if they had a Crown Vic that was sitting in their parking lot at the Sheriff's Department, not doing anything, just sitting there, if they could just park it on Chalk Hill or park it on Atterdag or park it on Alisol, it would probably help a little bit, more than the painted speed bumps. So anyway, that's all I wanted to say. I appreciate your time, and I appreciate Lieutenant Green and his crew for what they do. But we need traffic enforcement. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Hank.
Next speaker. Justin Rodriguez.
He wants to donate a Honda Trail 70.
Thank you for taking my comments. Councilmember Dearness, Councilmember Coupon. I would like to say that Karen Wade is right about the getting cameras. I think that's kind of a creepy thing, because right now you guys are thinking for good intentions, but in the future you don't know who's going to be in charge, how the technology is going to change. If you establish it now, in the future it could change, and now they're saying, oh, it just takes a picture of the car and make it's a color and the license plate, and that's it. But who knows, and everything always gets incrementally for whichever way people want it to go. So you never know if it's going to be for nefarious deeds, and I appreciate Karen Waite's comments about that. So that's all I had to say. So remember, think about it. Road to slavery is paved with good intentions.
Thank you.
Next speaker.
Do we have another speaker for items not on the agenda in person?
I'm Joanne Clark, and I'm a Solvang resident. I came to talk about the Veterans Memorial Hall. The Veterans Memorial Hall was dedicated to veterans, to anyone who served our country, who sacrificed any time of their life to our country, and more significantly to anyone who died in the defense of our nation, who gave up their life for our freedoms. So that's not a small thing. It's not an insignificant thing. So I was astounded when there was ever any consideration at all of selling that memorial for any purpose. It should never have been considered, and it should never be considered again in the future. It should remain what it is. And we live in a very unique place here. We have our mission, which is significant to California history. We have the Veterans Hall, which is very significant to American history. There are very few of them. And then we have Solvang, which is very significant in basically the American dream come true for immigrants. My family is one of those families. And so whenever there's a decision to be made about our town that could adversely affect it, something as monumental as the decision that was being made here, the citizens need to be involved in that decision making. I heard Mr. Clark talking to, I didn't know it was at the time, the city attorney, and said, I overheard the conversation where he said that the citizens need to be involved in decision making, but not all the decision making. Well, I know that there's decisions that the council makes that we don't need to be involved in, but something as significant as that proposed project, the citizens need to be involved. And there's a wealth of information from residents and business owners that have been here for years that know what works here and what doesn't work here, what can enhance our town, what can promote it, and what can preserve it and protect it. And I think we just need to work together. And unfortunately, that didn't happen here. So a lot of trust has been lost with the council. So let's hope that we gain some wisdom from this and we can go forward and include the community when there's something this important being decided. So thank you.
Next speaker.
Next speaker, please. In person, I believe we have one more. It's general comment. It's up to you. Just state your name and residence.
Jennifer Sony of Lions Peak. And what I'm here for is basically I want to give my appreciation to all of you in the city for what you've done to my business or for my business. With what you've done between the loan initially when COVID-19 came out and then the encroachment permits, you've allowed my business to flourish and make a positive, approach to staying in business, essentially. I'm kind of lost with some of the words. I'd looked previously, because I have a vineyard up in Paso, about expanding my tasting room facilities to Paso this past year, and still keeping Solvang, where I've been here 15, 16 years. And at that point, all of the properties that could be rented, there was nothing available. And on driving around this past week, because I do still live up there along with here too, there were significant vacancies. There was not the encroachments. There were some, but nothing like what we have done for Copenhagen and the businesses to flourish and the restaurants. And it was really tragic to see what was going on. And in conclusion, I really hope that we continue with what we're doing on Copenhagen, because I have so much positive feedback on the weekends on people that come here, that are here visiting from Boston, other areas on the East Coast, and talking about what they've seen happen with the encroachments and doing something more positive and permanent. And I think we have that ability to do that for our restaurants, for our tasting rooms, whether it is other retail establishments, to make a difference, particularly when the economy is so dire for so many small business owners. And all I can say is thank you, ladies and gentlemen. You are making a difference in my life, and I'm here as a result of all of you good people.
Thank you.
Thank you. You're welcome. And if there's anything I can do personally,
A Syrah, maybe?
I have had a GMS, but I have some great Bordeaux's and other
I've been to your
things.
place.
Yeah, so thank you.
We appreciate you taking the time to compliment.
Yeah, you always hear a lot of negativity, but you don't hear all the positive. And I think you should hear it, because you all do make a difference. And thank you.
Oh, thanks very much.
You're welcome.
Do we have any speakers on items not on the agenda on Zoom or on phone? If we have anybody on Zoom, please raise your hand. I see one. Everybody on Zoom, please raise your hand. Items not on the agenda. And then we'll go to those just on the phone after that. So we have Zach Foss first. Zach Foss, go ahead. You're unmuted. Okay, well, let's go to Melanie Johnson.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, so my name is Melanie Johnson. I'm speaking today on behalf of People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals, but also as a Scandinavian American who visited Solvang last March on vacation. I went to the city to learn more about Danish culture and to really enjoy the beauty of the area. And things that I loved the architecture, especially the windmills, and of course the nearby wineries. And the smells of the restaurants and bakeries were reminiscent of my grandmother's cooking. I really loved it, but something soured my visit when my heart sank when I saw two horses who were forced to pull a trolley filled with tourists for hours on end while pounding the blacktop. They had no shade from the sun. And to this day, the wonderful memories that I have of the city are unfortunately tainted by the image of those suffering animals. Tourists and residents are turning against using animals for entertainment as they learn about the significant animal welfare and public safety concerns involved. In the carriage industry specifically, horses are forced to pull heavy loads and they have to inhale car fumes for hours, even in the searing heat. And because these animals are unpredictable and easily spooked, using them for carriage and trolley rides can lead to accidents, injuries, and even deaths when the horses become startled and run amok. Just last week, a horse died in Charleston, South Carolina after sustaining leg injuries when he took off running while pulling a carriage. And earlier this year, a horse was euthanized after collapsing in New York Central Park. And late last year, two horses pulling a carriage at the Festival of Lights in Riverside, California, became unhitched and ran full speed down the street. Communities across the country are banning horse-drawn carriage rides. Chicago just became the largest city in the US to do so, following the lead of Breckenridge, Colorado, West Palm Beach, Florida, and after a horse dropped dead in front of tourists in Salt Lake City, its council voted unanimously to ban the trade. I'm asking you to please deny a license to DoubleTree carriages and retire the exhausted, overworked horses from Solvang's trolleys. The city can and should replace these dangerous, outdated carriages with vintage electric cars or e-trolleys, or make the existing ones electric, rather than allowing 5 more years of animal exploitation. And if you're willing, I asked the owner of the company who designed and built the electric car for New York City, his name is Jason Whitting, to join, and he's available if anyone has any questions about that. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker. She emailed in, so that you have an email.
Okay, next speaker is Nancy Emerson. Nancy?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
I can hear you.
Okay. Nancy Emerson, We Watch and Solvang resident. Mayor Toussaint and City Council members, We Watch thanks you for putting on hold the conceptual plans for the Vets Hall site and for realizing that the community needs the opportunity to come together and think about what we do want for the future of Solvang. Both were wise decisions. It was good to learn that you are searching for a firm that has worked with towns like ours and knows how to use diverse tools to circumvent any continued restrictions on in-person activities. We sent a list of potential community involvement tools to help you as you research and interview. One item on the list is charrettes, which are interactive visual events where the public participates with teams of professionals. They can be used to help community members visualize what they want a community to look like. Interestingly, Santa Barbara architects set up an online survey as part of a charrette for downtown State Street and already had 2,000 responses. So clearly, these kinds of tools can work. Until now, stakeholder was defined so narrowly that people who were residents only were not included. We cannot stress enough the importance of outreach to all segments of our city, including Latinx individuals, 29% of our residents. The need to diversify general fund income sources is real, as council has told us, and even more evident since COVID arrived. Our recent letter contained questions about this issue and a number of other questions where a community-wide consensus is needed. We look forward to this work. Thank you.
Next speaker.
Thank you. We have Zach Foss raising hand once again. Zach, if you can unmute, there you go.
I hope y'all can hear me this time.
Yes.
All right. I just wanted to quickly talk about the public surveillance system, the camera system that y'all were hoping to put in Solvang. There's a few things. I think it has a lack of proven effectiveness. There's immediate and ongoing costs. It's susceptible to abuse, lack of oversight, lack of legal avenues for complaint, a chilling effect on public life, troubled past pattern of practice, impacts on civil rights and the community trust, and conforming with California's evolving personal privacy legislation and law. Part is that Fresno started out with a budget about a few years ago. Their budget had to balloon over 500%. Also, they had so much trouble with being able to staff their public surveillance system that they had to hire volunteers out of the community to help. Also, a few years ago, there was a auditor's review of demands for location data, and Verizon received over 15,000 with only a third with a warrant. I think that if we do put cameras in such a small area in the city that we could necessarily surveil very, very large parts of the city. I don't think it's right. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
We have Jason Wenning. Jason?
Yes. Thank you very much. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Wonderful. So Melanie, who just spoke up on behalf of the horse trolleys, asked me to come on board here, and I'll just give a very brief background. Name is Jason Wenning. I own a company in Southeast Florida, and we are specialty car builders dealing with exotic and classic and antique vehicles. Many years ago, I was contacted by New York City, by Mayor de Blasio and a group that was trying to remove the horses from Central Park, looking for an amicable solution to what is perceived as a pretty significant problem in New York City. I'm an ex-New Yorker myself, and the carriage trade there. Since we built this electric antique vehicle, passionately named the Horseless E-Carriage, and unveiled it at the Jacob Javits Center, and was on the Today Show and went global. In the years that followed, I've been contacted by countless cities, both here in the United States and across the world. And the reason why I bring that up is because this really is a movement that is gaining serious momentum and being taken very seriously. I've been contacted by, to give you an example, Quebec, Vancouver, Salt Lake City, Charleston, Philadelphia, Mumbai, Cartagena, Australia, areas in Australia, 2 or 3 as a matter of fact, and so on and so forth. So the reality of the horse trade specifically for tourism is something that is being passionately embraced, discussed, and I was on the forefront of helping cities and businesses in coming up with solutions. So on behalf of Melanie and the effort to try to come up with an amicable, nostalgic solution so that tourism flourishes, I offer my services, my help. I had to survive a quite intensive storm in New York City for quite a bit of time because this was a rather contentious subject. As a New Yorker, we can have a fight over a bagel, let alone over something like horse carriages in New York City, in Central Park. But as you guys work to understand licensing and contracts and tourism and options, I offer my assistance in helping in a way I possibly can. I'm probably the most knowledgeable person on this subject in the country, having dealt with, again, multiple different city councils, multiple different private business owners, understanding the legality of these vehicles on the road. It is a moderately complex subject, but again, having been through it from different angles, I can help if and or when that conversation begins. And so with that, I'll leave it at that and leave it to any questions you might have, or certainly anyone can direct message me or follow up at any point in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Thank you. I don't see any more Zoom speakers. Jeremy, could we unmute the phone lines? Do we have anybody on the phone line here? I had one request on the phone. I'm not sure I see that number. Do we have anybody on the phone line that wishes to speak? Go ahead.
Can you hear us?
Yes.
My name is Rochelle Mueller. Can you hear me?
Yes. Rochelle Miller, could you state your residency as well? Rochelle?
Yeah, I'm a resident in Solvang. Rochelle Mueller.
Okay,
I live on Pine Street in Solvang. And I'm happy to have heard the last 2 speakers would like to embrace and hopefully have the board members give this information strong consideration, both for our environment personally, going with electric beams, and for the protection of these beautiful animals. I don't think I could say anything any more educationally than the previous 2 speakers. So that's all I'd like to say, but I've got Hazel Montgomery here with me who would like to speak. Mortensen, I'm sorry. And go ahead and give your address. Yeah. Is that okay?
Yes, who is the other person speaking? Please state your name and residency.
Hazel Mortensen.
Okay.
Were you able to hear that?
Yes.
Should I go ahead?
Yes, please.
Dear Mayor and Council members, I am writing regarding the horse-drawn carriages. I would like to know if the Health Department was consulted prior to the Honan starting up its business again. Since the city is not enforcing the COVID-19 regulations, I question whether you are opening yourself up to legal action. There are young children on the Honan without masks. The temperature/humidity these horses work in has always been a real concern to me. I personally have counted 26 people on the Honan instead of the 20 that are allowed. If these 6 weigh only 150 pounds each, that's an extra 900 pounds for the poor horses to pull, especially if the owners are also ignoring the agreed to temperature. I understand that our legal counsel will meet with the Honan owners to see if they agree to certain conditions. Frankly, after their past performance, I wouldn't hold my breath. A shrink on TV said past performance is a good indication of future performance. I certainly agree. On your agenda today, you will deal with the Cinderella coach issue. I am 100% against it, or any other horses, adding to the dreadful traffic jams. If a drunk backs out in front of the Cinderella horses, there is so little protection for horse or passengers with the delicate frame construction of the Cinderella carriage. They are pretty, but I care about safety. Most people are fed up with an excess of conveyances, including the new rickshaw riding on the sidewalk, plus trying to dodge teens on the sidewalk with skateboards. I realize there is a law against it. However, our laws seem to be made to be broken. The businesses are doing it every day, plus those without masks. The places that are obeying the virus laws are having less problems with the virus, and some are using fines as an incentive. However, those running for re-election in November probably won't offend the business people by making waves. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next speaker.
Jeremy, could we unmute the 3500727? It's up. There you go. Yeah, unmute that. Yep. Okay, do we have one more speaker? Item's not on the agenda.
Good.
Go ahead. State your name and residency.
Yes, that's me, Lammy Johnstone.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry?
Go ahead, we can hear you.
Yes. I would like to refer to Copenhagen. Open it up, despite what the lady said before. The council stated closure would only last through the July 4th period, yet it's still closed. Someone on the dais recently claimed 80% of the tenants approved. I find that interesting, since I find the absolute reverse. Further, your actions by keeping our street closed will probably end up with a lawsuit from those following the Disability Act. There are no places for people who have problems to park. Recall, if you will, the massive lawsuits brought against our businesses here because of inadequate disability problems. You have to think right now about taking down the barriers. Open up Copenhagen. The only ones who approve it are the restaurants, which I understand, and maybe some of the wineries. But other than that, forget it. All right, thank you for your time. We will chat later.
Next speaker.
Or do we have any more speakers? Raise your hand or just unmute yourself on the phone. I don't see any new speakers.
Okay. There was only one speaker, I believe, that had some comments about the sheriff's presentation. I didn't know if Jeff wanted to take a moment to answer any of those, or if not, we'll move past public comment.
It was the first speaker.
First speaker, Hank Comberg.
I think some of the notes I remember, he spoke about the traffic enforcement in his area next to Chuck Hill. If you'd like to make a comment about traffic.
And does Buellton still have a motor cop? It seems like I haven't seen.
Oh, no, they do.
They do? Okay. All right.
Yeah, I guess I didn't understand that there was a comment for me to make as far as, I thought that he more or less was saying that he wanted some form of potentially for you guys to consider a motor cop for Solvang due to some issues on Chalk Hill. Do we have a motor cop? No. We do have the one deputy that we're contracted with. Does he get up on Chalk Hill? Probably not as often as, they would like. That's probably very true. He's usually answering calls for service. His primary duty is not traffic in Solvang. Whereas in Buellton, they have the deputy who handles calls for service, and then the traffic enforcement guy, that's his primary duty. So, not really sure.
Right, so I think I had some conversations with Eddie Pond before you where we talked about the possibility of being able to just have some overtime for traffic enforcement if the city elected to use that option versus just contracting for a menu item.
If the city wants to elect to utilize overtime, we can always talk about that. No doubt.
So if we did pursue looking into the cost behind having a motor cop in Solvang, I'm just curious, can that be, is there any merit in sharing some of that cost with Buellton, so it's not like it's every single day or
I think it would be something that we could work with through the contract bureau to talk about.
Yeah, so when we had our annual meeting on the contracts, the city manager from City of Buellton was there, and he had gotten some original feedback, I believe, from his council. And their position was that they were not interested in like a part-time additional motorcycle unit. They were just going to stay with their one motorcycle unit. So they weren't interested in partnering with that particular position.
They didn't want to keep it one full-time unit there. Okay, cool. Well, if you have any other questions, you can ask, but I just, those were a couple comments that were brought up by one of the residents, so I just want to give you the opportunity. So. Perfect. With that, we'll move past public comment.
Thanks, Lieutenant.
We'll go to item number 2, executive reports and advanced calendar.
Thank you, Council. I will keep my report fairly brief today, as we will actually address everything else in our further items on the agenda. So I'll jump straight to the advanced calendar for August 10th. On August 10th, one of the items that I think will be of interest to you is the last quarter of 2019-20 financial update. We will have all numbers for TOT and sales tax for that last quarter that was mostly impacted by COVID-19. And I will also have some additional projections going forward for sales tax that we get from our consultant, and as well as our update to transient occupancy tax projections looking forward through the year. And then just a few items that are on the list. Good news that there is another grant available coming from the state through the county, which is a REAP grant that we can apply now. That's an additional $117,000 that the city of Solvang will be eligible for, and that can be used also to supplement our general plan update, and especially it's mostly targeting the housing element update. We have a request from Commission of Women of Santa Barbara County to approve a resolution in support of the United Nations Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women. So that would be a future item for the agenda. And then we'll have a Monterey Bay Community Power who are requesting a presentation. As you would recall, the council elected to enter into the program that creates additional opportunities for residents for power, and we have been represented this year. We share a seat with City of Guadalupe. City of Guadalupe has been kind of leading this year. City of Solvang will be leading next year, but they're requesting to give us an update on that program. And then, of course, next time we will have more of an update on marketing update again. And looking forward to August 24th, a couple of notable items would be that I would hope to have results of an RFP and potentially a contract proposal for you to look at for the general plan update. I'm hoping to onboard that consultant sooner than later, depending on how well we are responded to. But if we do get enough responses, I'm hoping to get back to you on August 24th with that. And then the branding and design committee applications are now open. Those are available with the instructions on the front page of the city website. And the first priority deadline for applications is through August 17th. All of the instructions are online. I'm hoping that by August 24th, we'll be able to bring you a first round of applications for that branding and design committee, which replaces the BAR. And that concludes my report.
Okay, with that, we'll move on to the item number 3, the consent agenda. Does anyone wish to pull anything from the consent agenda?
No.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda as is.
I'll second it.
So moved and seconded.
I'm sorry, I wasn't paying attention.
We moved and seconded the approval of the consent
Thank you.
agenda as is.
No items pulled.
Okay. Mayor Pro Tem Clark?
Yes.
Councilmember DeJarnius?
Yes.
Councilmember Johnson?
Yes.
Councilmember Waite?
Yes.
Mayor Toussaint?
Yes.
Passes 5-0.
All right. On to public hearings. We have item number 4, DoubleTree Carriages, animal drawn conveyance, license application. It's my understanding that they've not here and they're requesting this item get rescheduled.
Correct. I can either walk you briefly through the presentation and application. You can defer it, but yes, the applicants were not able to be here today and they would like to still continue to apply, which means that we would have to set it for a hearing in the future, which actually will likely be the August 24th is when we can make it.
Okay.
So it's up to you. You can just delay it or hear a
Delay
brief
it.
presentation.
Let's delay the
Just
whole
move we
thing.
table this till.
Okay.
Yeah. It's been moved and seconded.
Mayor Pro Tem Clark?
Yes.
Councilmember DeJarnius?
Yes.
Councilmember Johnson?
Yes.
Councilmember Waite?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem, Mayor Toussaint?
Yes. All right. With that, we'll move on to item number 5.
Wait a minute.
Okay, can we please mute everybody online?
Item number 5, resolution of the resolution of the City Council of the City of Solvang accepting the sufficiency of the recall petition and requesting consolidation of the recall with general municipal election to be held on November 3rd, 2020. Staff report.
So item number 5 is in regards to the recall petition. There is 3 total resolutions that are in front of the council. The first resolution is number 21116, and it's a resolution of the City Council of the City of Solvang, California, accepting the certificate of sufficiency of signatures on the petition to recall Councilmember Niels Chris DeJarnius. Resolution number 2 is 2117, and that's a resolution of the City Council of the City of Solvang, California, calling for the holding of a general municipal election to be held on Tuesday, November 3rd, 2020, for submission of the question of the recall of Niels Chris DeJarnius and the election of a candidate to fill the vacancy if the recall prevails. And resolution number 3 is a resolution of the City Council of the City of Solvang, California, requesting the County of Santa Barbara to render specified services to the city relating to the conduct of a general municipal election to be held on Tuesday, November 3rd, 2020, for submission of question of the recall of certain officers and the election of a candidate to fill the vacancy or vacancies if recall prevails. So a little bit of background information on this. On June 25th, notice of intention to circulate recall petition was filed and served. On July 2nd, Councilmember Jornes filed an answer to the notice of intention. On the same day of July 2nd, the proponent submitted form for petition, which was determined to meet statutory requirements, thus allowing to proponents to begin gathering signatures. The election code, section 11221, requires the number of signatures for sufficiency of petitions to be 25% of registered Solvang residents. Thus, with 3,679 registered voters in the city of Solvang, required minimum number of signatures is 920. The proponent was given 60 days, which are statutorily provided, to collect the signatures. On July 20th, the proponent submitted unverified signatures in the amount of 1,334. I have an extra 3 in there, that's incorrect. And those were submitted to me as city clerk. Those signatures were submitted to the county elections office on the same date, and on July 24th, the county clerk, recorder, and assessor certified verification of 1,156 valid signatures, which meets the minimum criteria of 920. If the city council does not call the election within 14 days of acceptance of sufficiency of the petition, the county will call the election automatically within 5 days from that date. The election must be held no sooner than 88 days and no later than 125 days after it is called. If a regular or special election is set to occur within that time frame, the recall election must be consolidated with that election. The deadline to call election for November 3rd is August the 7th, so we're within that time frame. So in front of you is the items of passing these 3 resolutions. If election is called, the nomination period to succeed Neil Chris DeJornis, if recall prevails, will close on August 20th, 2020. That concludes my report.
Okay, with that, we'll go to public comment.
Do we have any public comment in person or on Zoom? If you would like to speak, please raise your hand. I see Melanie Johnson still has her hand raised, but I'm not sure if it was from the previous item. Melanie?
Yeah, sorry about that. That was from the previous item.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone else wish to speak on this item? If you're on the phone, please just go ahead and unmute yourself. See none.
Okay. If none, we'll take this back for the...
Oh, good.
Oh, Lammy?
Wait, it's me. I'm unmuted.
We can hear you?
Go ahead.
You can?
Yes.
Okay. It's Lammy Johnstone. Can you, in fact, really hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Go ahead, Lammy.
Okay. All right. In a way, I'm sorry, really sorry about this, to do something like this. However, let this be a lesson to any council member or mayor. If you do not listen to we the people of Solvang, we will remove you. Your job, as I look at it, is to represent us. If you do not, you will be replaced. Regarding the second part, which involves approval of the Board of Supervisors, I have 3 lawyers that I talk to. Not any one of them agree with that, except if you all do not approve this tonight. Then the Board of Supervisors comes in within 14 days or at the end of 14 days. Anyway, again, it saddens me that we had to do this, but then again, it's a wake-up call. It's a wake-up call for everybody sitting on that dais. It's also a big-time wake-up call for everybody here in the city. We are we the people. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Is there any more public comment?
Anyone else? See none.
Chip, would you like to address some of the,
Yeah, the one thing, and I'm not sure if I understood what the speaker was saying, but in no instance does this go to the Board of Supervisors. So if somebody was of the belief somehow that this was going to go to the Board of Supervisors, it does not. Your council, in fact, you have an obligation, it is essentially administrative, to take action within 14 days of this evening to set the election. If you fail, you would actually be failing, is the language of the election code. And the remedy, if you fail to take your required action, is it then just goes to the county elections official. It doesn't go to the board, and the elections official just sets it for election.
okay. We'll take it back to the council for discussion and action. Is there any discussion on this item?
Yes.
Karen?
I just want to also say with regret that I'm very sorry that we're faced with having to make this decision. I do 100% believe in the process of public election. Something that I'm not happy with the way the ordinance is written is that it doesn't give us an opportunity to see who the replacement individuals may be before we take action on this. And I don't know the reason for the delay in that, but I think that would be a very important thing to know.
So, Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Waite, that has nothing to do with the way that the resolutions are written. It's how the election code actually works in California. And the election code specifically provides that once the qualifying petition has been presented to you, essentially the only discretion that you have is when, in the 14-day period, you take action to set the election. Other than that, you're required to set the election, and if the date is within not less than 88 nor more than 125 days from a general election, then it shall be set at that date. Then there's a further provision in the election code, which again is in the election code, you don't have any control over this, which provides that the vote on someone who would take the office if, and it's only if, the recall is successful, that does occur at the same election. So it always occurs at the same election, and the time for somebody to qualify to run for that position is actually up to 75 days before the election. So it actually, again, people have the opportunity to run or to be nominated to run for the seat up until August the 20th, while you must take action by August the 7th. So the election code just doesn't allow for that possibility, and there's nothing we can do with the resolutions to change that.
But to more or less answer Karen's concern, the recall basically puts that person in a campaign. They can campaign to try to not be recalled, for example.
Yes.
And if successful and getting more than 50% of the votes, then that person will stay in their seat the next year. If the community doesn't like, for example, who might be running for the recalled seat in the same election, they're probably going to vote no on recalling that council member.
Yes, so
the two are bifurcated,
yeah.
but
the electorate gets to make that choice.
Yeah.
The elections code just doesn't allow this council to make that
Right,
choice.
I understand.
And that was the way when Greg Davis went through his recall. I think we had Cruz Bustamante and Arnold Schwarzenegger running for an office that they didn't know that they would get unless the recall went through, and then whoever was the top vote getter. So people are campaigning for something that might not ever happen. So it's a fascinating process, but it's happened before.
Correct.
Exactly, and I see that everything was done correct and according to the processes, and it's passes scrutiny of the city and, well, it's about to, and the county, as far as the required number of individuals. So, I just wanted to just personally say that it is kind of a little convoluted that you don't know who the replacement would be, but yet you're willing, as a majority of the individuals that voted for the petition here, to replace this individual without actually knowing who they might be replaced with. So I just found that a little convoluted.
Actually, they will know who
But
the
not until
potential
after
replacement is
the-
before they vote on the recall issue. So the issue of voting yes or no on the recall happens at the same time and at the same election as the potential replacement is also voted on.
No, I understand that, but we will be deciding whether or not to put the recall on the ballot this evening.
Yes, we have no choice.
Well, you don't really have any.
I
I'm not voting.
understand that. It was just a personal comment.
But the recall up to this point is more about giving the voters that option
Yes.
come this
I understand.
election. So, is there any more discussion on this item?
I have comments.
I've got a quick question, if you don't mind, then you can comment.
Yeah.
Technically speaking, they could use the same people over and over again to recall me in this particular instance, right? So this group of people could do this again sometime in the spring. If they lose, they could do it again in the summer. They could just keep doing this, and the city would have to pay for those votes, right?
So if you are talking about, if you were not recalled in November.
Right, let's assume I win.
Could they file it against you
Let's assume I win,
again
right.
It
would be like double jeopardy, exactly.
So I don't have the elections code in front of me. I do recall that there is at least a period of time within which they cannot refile. And I just don't remember off the top of my head.
But technically,
how long
they
that
can
period of
recall for
time is.
no reason at all, just because I wear the wrong shirt color, right? So there's nothing having to do with malfeasance, nothing to do with having to do with a bad vote. It's just, they don't like me, they want to keep recalling me.
That's one of the
and
comments that I want to make.
and the city is
In the
forced to
state of
pay for it.
California, it is
Right.
very broad.
So then the city would have to keep paying for those recalls.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the answer.
But my comments on it are, and I said this from the very beginning, I do believe that Chris is his own worst enemy. I think he makes really, really, really good points. 1,300 people signed a petition. We have no choice but to put it on the ballot. And I support that because a majority of residents, not a majority, excuse me, the correct number of residents, there's 1,300 people down to 1,156 that want this to go on a ballot. I think in reading the ballot, it was about people feel that Chris is rude. He talks back to people, and I thought, well, if you recalled every ass that's ever served in public office, there wouldn't be a lot of people in public office. You know, Ted Cruz would not be in the Senate because nobody likes him in the Senate. But he was elected by people, and Chris walked on to doors and knocked on doors, and he made his case to the residents, and I think he's rubbed some people the wrong way. One of the comments of the recall wording was, if he's allowed to remain in his seat, the quality of life will be diminished in Solvang and taxes would go up. And I laughed for about a half an hour on that, because if there's anybody that's going to raise taxes, it's going to be over Chris's dead body. And I think this is what, their second or third attempt at recalling people. They went after county supervisors a few years ago with the same person wanting to replace it. The person that's behind the recall followed me around a GOP meeting, interrupting everybody I talked to tell them that I was in the pocket of developers because somebody gave me a donation who lives in Moore Park that just happens to like Republicans. So, I mean, obviously we have to go through with this, but it's just, gee, he's a jerk and he's going to diminish the quality of life. Is there a document for that? And taxes are going to go up. That's the basis of this recall. Okay, if Chris stays here, there's one, and God darn it, I get back at this again. There's 5 freaking people up here that ran independently. We're not one body. And having one person on a council doesn't mean taxes are going to go up, especially Chris. And I admonish Chris for his behavior at these meetings. It drives me crazy that he can't shut up and let people talk. I get it. That's his personality. He's very passionate. And as I said before, and I got chastised about this because It was that some Facebook, which is where most of the adults in this town get their news from, is Facebook, not the news. They don't talk to us. Anybody wants to know, like, for example, the trolley. If anybody had called me and said, do you support the trolley? I would say yes. But no, nobody asked me that. Nobody asked anybody else that. And there's 40 protesters outside. I was going to sell Chris bobblehead dolls to the first 100 protesters tonight, but they didn't show up. I don't get it, but this is the people's will. I support the people, so I have to go through with this. But I just think the whole thing is odd. That's my comment. But it should go to the ballot, and that's because the people want it. And I'm elected by the people, and I'm doing what the people want. That's my comment. I think it's silly.
Is there any other discussion or comment on this item?
Yeah.
No? Karen?
Just one more comment. I mean, Mr. Clark usually expands upon what I'm thinking.
She has filter. I have no filter. I got to admit, 1 month here, people were talking about recalling some people on this council in January of 2019. We hadn't been sworn into office for 3 weeks. I'm like, gosh, I guess in this little sweet town, you upset a few people and look what happens. It just blows my mind.
Karen?
Yeah, I just wanted to just let Chris know that I'm disappointed that it's turned out this way. But again, we do represent the people in the city of Solvang who do want this. So it is something that I feel we absolutely have to vote to put on the ballot. And, well, I never thought I'd see myself in a situation having to make a decision that I hope that the individuals that did sign the recall petition do understand how this affects someone's life. I know that they feel their lives have been affected by Mr. DeJernis's actions on the council or his decorum or lack thereof at times. So we have to respect that and go along with their wishes.
Yeah.
I feel obligated to say something. First of all, thank you guys for stating your opinions. Again, I'm just one voice of 5. And if you're, as Winston Churchill once said, if you're not making enemies in life, then you're not standing up for the right things. I feel, as Robert had suggested or said, I have stood up for the majority of the people in this community, both the residents and the businesses, when I say that we've been trying as a council and me as an individual to find ways to actually lower taxes. And to that end, we've been exploring ways to utilize city property to generate more revenue so that the residents don't have to pay more taxes. This is an obvious thing for this council, I guess, but apparently it's lost on certain individuals that want to recall me. I was told, the rumor has it that I want to build a Trump Tower in the middle of Solvang Park. I didn't know that I wanted to do that. That's amazing.
Oh, that was my idea.
Oh, that was but this is a democratic process, and you have to respect that. And it gives me another opportunity to go before the voters and to explain to them what, again, I can only speak for myself, but I can reflect, I think, what many of us have said over the last 2 years, that we really do want a better community. We want to balance the needs of the community residents with those of the businesses. And we're trying the best we can to move the city forward in very difficult circumstances with respect to budget finances and some very tough decisions that we have to make. They're not fun, and people's lives have been affected, namely the employees that unfortunately were let go. That was not something that we did lightly, but that was necessary to save the city, to save the businesses, to save the community. So having said that, I look forward to the opportunity of going out and making that case again. If it needs to be done every year, then I will make it so every year. People need to understand what this council, what I stand for, and what this council's been fighting for, and I'm happy to do that myself. Now with that, I'm going to have to probably abstain from the vote, aren't I? Well, I'd rather just abstain.
I don't think you're required to do anything, but you can certainly abstain. If there's no other discussion, I'll move that we pass the 3 resolutions as written.
I'll second that.
It's been moved and seconded.
Mayor Bertram Clark,
Yes.
Councilmember Johnson,
No.
Councilmember Waite,
Yes.
Mayor Toussaint.
Yes.
Passes 3 yes, 1 no, 1 abstained.
Okay. With that, we'll take a restroom. Actually, how long is the COVID-19 update?
It's not extremely long.
20 minutes or less?
Yes.
Well,
But we can take a quick break if you'd
Do
like.
you guys want to break now or after? Okay, let's take the break now. 5 minutes. All right, ready? Move on to item number 6, COVID-19 update.
Okay, COVID-19 update. I'll just start with a few clarifications and reminders, and then we'll talk a little bit more about Copenhagen Street, and we also have Scott Shoemake here who will join us. So just to clarify, last time we talked about changes in state regulations for COVID-19, where a number of businesses were to be shut down in the county of Santa Barbara. And then subsequent to that, there's different commissions, et cetera, at the state level that oversee operations of hair salons, barbershops, massage parlors, for example. So since then, those clarifications came through, and we already knew that restaurants could operate outside, but we also now know that places of worship can hold outside services, and that massage parlors and hair salons and barbershops are actually allowed to operate outside. So as you may see some things around town, those businesses are also trying to survive and applying for encroachment permits to get outside and be able to operate. So once again, a reminder to businesses that more businesses are now starting to take advantage of is that signs and permit restrictions have been eased for COVID-19. This is a message on the front of the webpage for the city that says that all we ask for is a very streamlined encroachment permit for businesses to be able to expand outside. They can do so on a private property, but when there is encroachment into the public right-of-way, they need to fill this out so we can appropriately permit them. So the way to do that is actually on solvangresources.com under the business section. And it's a very simple, quick application of one-pager that they have to fill out. And we usually respond back within the same day. So to Copenhagen Street closure, as I've just mentioned, there's more businesses that are asking for encroachment all across town. So it's not only about the Copenhagen Street closure, but once again, reminder that the Copenhagen Street has been closed, and when we, together with IDK, presented this to the City Council originally, we talked about July 4th being kind of the deadline of a trial period. But since then, all these changes occurred, especially the latest changes to where all these businesses can only operate outside. So I think it's reasonable at this point to say that we're really looking at a much longer period of time to where this closure will be necessary to facilitate those businesses. We have a lot of businesses on Copenhagen Street. We also, as Scott will talk to more, getting positive feedback from tourists about having that closure. So given, how the pandemics work and potential that this may be continues back and forth, at least through the winter probably, when usually the pandemic may get worse, I would say that we need to plan at least at the 6 months to potentially a year for the closure. So with that, Scott will talk more about it, but we are making some temporary replacements for some of the furniture that was set up there for just kind of folks, not necessarily even at the restaurants, but taking takeout food to be able to sit down and enjoy Solvang. And we're also hoping that the first task that the branding and design committee, once they're formed, could undertake is actually looking at a more comprehensive design for Copenhagen Street that could be used throughout this closure for COVID-19. And so with that, I would like to invite Scott on Zoom to jump in and give us an update on that.
Yeah, thanks, Tina. Just to out of an abundance of clarity, we originally came to the council to talk about the Copenhagen closure, at the beginning of May. And it was originally as a way to safely welcome tourists back when tourism was eventually allowed. As we were seeing, during those council meetings every 2 weeks, we were presenting the reports from Visit California and other tourism boards that were showing that overwhelmingly tourists wanted to feel safe, and communities wanted to feel safe before they would welcome tourists back again. And then more importantly at the time was to allow residents to continue to support the struggling small businesses while feeling safe in their own community. So we obviously chatted with the city council. We worked, within our own groups extensively over, most of May, and got approval to close it for just 1 month through the July 4th weekend. We sourced and paid for all the furniture and decor ourselves. And really for us, it was a way to kind of kick off the marketing, remarketing of Solvang, to those that were willing to visit at the time. Obviously, that all changed about 2.5 weeks into the closure when Governor Newsom ordered things closed. And the Copenhagen closure became pretty essential, obviously, to the restaurants and tasting rooms on the street. But it became more clear also to some of the other businesses that were beginning to see an uptick in business, which was needed, that they would need to expand out onto the street a little bit. So, that closure has now exceeded what it was originally, what we originally wanted it to do. So, we're sort of coming to the council now to sort of hand it back, for lack of a better word, to the council and give you guys the chance to sort of talk through it, since we obviously haven't had this conversation since, the last council meeting in May. So one of the first questions that we would pose, and I'll go through these and we can chat about it, but one of the first questions is obviously, does the council still see a desire to keep Copenhagen closed based on your feedback from constituents? Just to address the blue zone concern that came up earlier in the meeting today, that was obviously a sincere concern of ours because one disabled parking space was taken away there on Copenhagen. So the moment Copenhagen was closed, an additional blue zone spot was added to the parking lot. And then about 2 weeks after it was closed, we added a total of 4 more blue zone spots, both on Second and on First, adjacent to Copenhagen. So at this point, there's actually more handicap parking along Copenhagen than there's ever been. So it's the first 2 spots on the corner at Copenhagen, so just around the corner on the open streets. But whether your constituents, your conversations with your constituents would like to keep it closed, we have moved one of our staff members into Solvang Thursday through Sunday. And so they're spending a lot of time, chatting with businesses, chatting with tourists, and gathering data. And I will say that initially when we did that survey back in the first week of May, it was approximately 70% of the businesses that had surveyed were in support. We were, we recognized that we didn't only survey Copenhagen businesses then, so we've tried to fix that, and we do talk to businesses on Copenhagen, if not weekly, at least every other week. Zena and I personally have walked around and spoken with many of the businesses, and I know our staff continues to chat with them. And aesthetics are the one thing that many of the businesses brought up. They hated the brown tables, which I personally apologize for. It was, hard to find furniture at short notice for a long period. But, those went away today, and we've, expanded out the other metal tables and chairs for the short term. So, our recommendation, obviously, since this has grown outside of its original purpose, was that a longer term design strategy, if it stays closed for a longer term, be put in place by a city committee, by the BDC, for example, rather than by us. In the short term, obviously, we planned on that being like a month-long thing, so we can't pay for the furniture forever. So, we would want to understand the council's desire either for the city to purchase furniture and, subsidize that cost, to rent to businesses, not just on Copenhagen, but throughout Solvang, since obviously getting outdoor space is going to become more and more important through the pandemic, or authorizing the city manager to continue renting the furniture from the local vendor in Santa Barbara County that they're renting it from. So in any case, obviously since it's expanded over the 30 days and changed a little bit from its initial plan, we wanted to sort of extract ourselves from it and really, allow the council to act on it and ask any questions you may have.
I had a few things on my list. Just want to go from my notes top down. One was solvingresources.com. When was the last time we did like an overall review of that website to make sure it still has like updated information? Because that was kind of starting in a hurry when this whole thing started, and I just don't know how much it's actually been maintained.
I'd have to ask my team. I can get back to you via email.
Okay.
I'm actually not sure, to be honest.
And then as we talk about, I mean, you asked earlier what each council member's been getting in terms of feedback from the businesses about the current status of Copenhagen. I've noticed a lot of businesses that were anti-closure now supporting it. I think we had one of our biggest anti-ones just speak tonight in full support of not only the temporary closure, but the, keeping it that way. And I've received a lot of positive feedback myself personally. The biggest complaint that I get is just about aesthetic and the pics, what I'm going there is in terms of furniture and stuff like that. I'm always trying to explain to people that it's not like this was a planned closure. This was a, something's happened and now everyone's got to suddenly jump and try to, go into survival mode. You have event companies going out of business. It's hard to get your prime furniture. It's just your expectation can't be too insane. But it seems like that's one of the biggest things for people to at least try to understand that. I'm just curious today if options are opening up in terms of furniture that we can obtain or making the aesthetics look better. Don't know what the current market is for those kinds of items. And I would really like to see, I don't have the businesses been resurveyed? I know there was a survey at the beginning about the Copenhagen closure. Have they been resurveyed again? Those are just some of the things I can ramble off the top of my head.
Yeah, so I'll address the survey point. I'm actually have been working with several local groups to try and get a robust survey about COVID kind of in general out to the businesses, to really understand for our tourism purposes as well, to make sure that we're meeting, the businesses' goals and the residents' goals for tourism. Obviously we were dismayed early on at the lack of compliance with the mask mandate. So we got the little stickers that said keep 6 feet apart and had the A-frames made, to encourage folks to mask up. And, we've seen, I think everywhere in California has seen a better percentage of visitors masked up. So, but there's still work to be done there. So I think that we need a broader COVID survey. In terms of Copenhagen specifically, yes, our staff has gone around, like I said, if not weekly, at least every other Thursday, and sat down and chatted with businesses on Copenhagen specifically, and asked their feelings. So we do have that data. It's something that we're welcome, happy to share with other groups in town to try and capture as much data as we can from as many businesses as we can to ensure that we're meeting that it's meeting their needs. And then in terms of furniture, you're right. There was a major auction over the weekend of a couple of companies that went out of business. And, the problem now is you're competing with, every other city in California, every other restaurant in California, every bar, everything that's trying to go outside. So it's hard to find quality outdoor furniture right now. The other side of it, not to put too fine a point on it, but economically, the cost of the Copenhagen closure was 150% of our contract value for the first quarter. So, which we were happy to do. It was our sort of our pitching in. Everybody needed to pitch in to support each other during that initial time. So obviously, I can't afford to keep paying to keep the picket fences and the tables and the chairs and all that. So, the economics of it have to change now that it looks like it's a longer term thing. And again, we're just trying to sort of extract because we think that it's the right thing to do. This needs to be more of a back to a city-driven, resident and business-driven, rather than a marketing and tourism-driven activity at this stage.
Okay, are there any questions of the council?
Yes.
And I believe Scott was also asking for feedback of what people have been hearing. Okay, Chris, you spoke up first.
Scott, thank you for your quick work in setting that up, turning Copenhagen into a safe, visitor-friendly and healthy environment with respect to the COVID situation. And my understanding is that we did this on the cheap, primarily because everybody just assumed we would get back to normal by July the 4th. Well, clearly the state, or Governor Newsom, has other plans, correct? And do you have any idea, or does anybody at the health department have any idea of how long these rolling lockdowns are going to continue?
Yeah, you're 100% right. We did it based on what we could get in the marketplace, you know, with about a week and a half from the time that the closure was approved to the time we started doing it. You know, pulling all that together with what was available for 35 days at the time, that's what we originally designed it for. So, you know, a lot of that we own now. You know, a local company out of Buellton helped us build all of the little shade structures. We went to the nursery there and bought all the plants, for example. You know, but we had to rent all the tables and chairs and all the rest of that stuff. And you know, yeah, we did what we could, you know, but even on the cheap, I think it was, you know, the initial quote we got was $78,000, something like that.
Per
and I
month?
think by the time we were all said and done, we spent, you know, close to 50. Per
month? Or what's the term on that?
Yeah, that was for a month.
No, 50.
So, you know, obviously nobody wanted to do that forever. So we went with what we could afford and what made sense to do at the time. And then to answer your more specific question about how long you think this will last, I have no idea. I don't have that crystal ball. I wish I did. I do know that we've been working with many many events that want to come back to town, which I know our hotels and businesses, you know, it's a fine line, right? We want everybody to be safe and we want everybody to be healthy. You know, and we need tourism dollars. So we've been chatting with a lot of these events that want to come back, and we've been told by state and local officials, state and county officials, that it's unlikely that any events will be permitted through the end of the year. So if we use events as a litmus test for other gatherings, then, you know, I think that it's unlikely that you're going to see any return to normalcy in 2020.
Sorry,
but that's my personal opinion.
No, thank you, Scott. That's actually very informative, and I'm sure Xenia can add to that because she talks to the health departments, I'm sure, more frequently. But I think I'm suggesting as an individual to council that we're going to have to buckle down and perhaps invest in something like this for the rest of the year. Clearly, you can't support this out of your small budget. This is something that we as a council probably should reconsider, because clearly it's the best thing and the safest thing we can do for our businesses, for our residents, and for the visitors. We certainly don't want to be sued or open ourselves up to some kind of liability. Have you got any survey data that shows how each of these three groups have responded to this? I know you said you talked to the businesses, but did you talk to the residents? Did you talk to the visitors? What did you get out of this?
We've not talked to residents. That's a tough group to reach. We're working with actually one of our data people's lurking on the call here, but we're working on a visitor survey, but we'd like to do it in conjunction with one of the larger merchant groups in town, so that we're capturing, you know, one of the I don't want to use the word criticism, but one of the pieces of feedback that we got early on is that we weren't surveying enough people. So we really want to make sure that we're doing as all-encompassing as possible. So we're working on that as we speak, in terms of trying to gather resident feedback. In terms of tourists, overwhelmingly tourists support it. There's even articles in the newspaper where somebody came from I think Calabasas or maybe Carlsbad, I can't remember, something with the C, and specifically said that they came because they saw that we did this. And then once they came, they really got to experience the slow kind of way of life that Solvang is known for. And, you know, their comment to the reporter was, you know, I had no idea this existed and we'll certainly be back. So in terms of a tourism tool, it's you know, I understand the danger of tourism, and I understand that there are some people in Solvang that are upset that, you know, tourists are coming. You know, and I think that there are people, you know, tourism is legal under the health orders, and there are certainly those who, you know, are traveling safely. And, you know, this is a tool to, you know, to provide tourism in this safe a way as possible. You know, people can kind of expand on Copenhagen and you know, and distance a little bit without being on top of each other on the sidewalks.
So just last question. I'm getting the impression from you and others that we should continue this probably through the end of the year. Is that what you're implying?
So I would say that from a tourism perspective, yes. Originally, this was a different thing, right? So I don't want to speak too generally. I want to speak very narrowly. From a tourism perspective, I believe that this is something that should stay from the people, at least through the end of the COVID restrictions on business. From the businesses we've spoken to, and I understand that there are organizations that represent businesses, and I would love to hear and see their data as well. You know, maybe some businesses are not as supportive as what they're telling us when we go in and chat with them. So, you know, I would want the city obviously to hear from the other constituencies, but from our purposes, from tourism marketing, it's a powerful tool to ensure that people feel safe coming to Solvang, and a tool to ensure that, ensure is too strong a word, a tool to assist tourists keeping our residents safe.
Thank you.
Robert?
Yeah, maybe I got it wrong when I heard something, but originally 80% of the merchants on Copenhagen were supportive, correct? That's what the number
the number we gave you back in May was approximately 75% of the businesses surveyed, which at the time we didn't realize that we'd surveyed about 100 businesses, but not all of them were on Copenhagen.
Okay.
So at that time it was 75% of businesses. Today, as of today, when we've surveyed close to 90% of the businesses on Copenhagen, and all but 2 are supportive.
It's one of the callers, I think it was the woman Lemming, who said it was 80% opposed. Was that what she commented?
Something like that.
Something like that. Interesting. You know, one thing I would say is that I had breakfast at Belgian Cafe on Sunday with my wife and daughter, and was home from college, and the people, and I asked a few of the not the residents, but the visitors, they love it. I did talk to a few of the merchants, and they were floating an idea, and I know it would be expensive because we have very little staff right now, but they were saying, you know, why can't we close Copenhagen on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday? And I'm speaking to it's not a restaurant and it's not a clothing store, but it's somebody I really respect on Copenhagen. And he was asking, what are the chances that we could open the street up Monday through Thursday and then close it Friday, Saturday, Sunday? I said, well, that's a huge manpower thing. We don't have the staff to do it. Scott's not getting paid enough to do it, to move all this stuff in, move all this stuff out. But have you heard that at all from anybody? Opening it up during the week so people can drive to their stores, so locals can drive to the stores they want to drive to? What do you think about that?
Yeah, we've heard that, and we chatted with, I mean, obviously we're not traffic engineers, so we work very closely with the city's public works department. And, you know, I'm looking at the survey data from a week ago Thursday, and we have one restaurant that said, or not restaurant, excuse me, retail establishment that says only once weekend, somewhat likes it. One tasting room, yes, way more tables. Another tasting room says, yes, it's a godsend. A retail location says, yes, godsend, love it. But then incidentally, there are 2 retail locations that want the block over kind of by the visitor center opened, at least half that block, so people can still get in
I've
and
heard
out
that
of
as well.
Yep. So, you know, again, for our purposes, from a tourism perspective, you know, this was a very tightly designed short-term plan, and it sort of exceeded what we're capable of delivering, you know, in a longer term. So, you know, I'm certainly happy to work with Public Works. I'm happy to work with the city manager to, you know,
Can it be done? If enough businesses wanted it, could it feasibly be done to move that stuff off on Sunday night and bring it back on Thursday night?
Sure, totally. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean,
I think it's something we should talk.
Might be cost prohibitive.
That's what I'm saying. That's what my first thought was. If it's, I mean, I would be willing to volunteer and go out there twice a week and help move stuff.
So Scott, how is the, what do they call it, farmer's market doing under the new layout? Where I guess they're doing it now in Copenhagen instead of First Street. How are they accepting this?
The last email I have from the gentleman in Santa Barbara is about 2.5 weeks old, and he said that the farmers were quite happy. The one change that they asked for is they wanted to be able to drive onto the street to unload and then go and park, rather than park and then kind of have to carry everything onto the street. We worked with Public Works and made that change happen for them, and I haven't heard anything since then. So I'm operating on the no news is good news.
And I have one last thing. What is it going to take us to where the cones are on Alisal, where you turn right on Copenhagen? You know you can't turn right. There's a barricade there. Why can't we, in the meantime, have parking where those cones are and put a few more slots on Alisal? Maybe I shouldn't be asking you. I should be asking somebody else. But
I was copied on an email there to the city manager and public utilities, and that's obviously above our pay grade. So I'll let the city manager answer that.
Okay.
And really quick, just before I had one more question. So the idea on Copenhagen, where the road closure, it's First and in Copenhagen, where the parking areas, if the closure was moved back a little further so that people could still use that parking lot in the way that they're used to using it, is there any merit behind doing that?
We would have. Sorry, Zena, that's probably a question you can answer, but we would talk to Public Works and see if there's a traffic engineering way to do that. What ends up happening, just anecdotally, from an event standpoint, when we've had to do that, is you end up with people making a right turn that don't want to go into the parking lot. They intended to go down Copenhagen. They didn't realize it's no longer a through street. So then they use the parking lot to cut onto that alley, and all of a sudden you've got like a ton of traffic on that little alley then going back up to First because they're using the parking lot to kind of get themselves unstuck. Or if they're from out of town and don't know they can do that, then they're trying to make a U-turn in the middle of the street, which gets complicated too.
Okay.
But that's all traffic engineering, which, you know, I'm sure your city manager can chat with Public Works and see if that's feasible.
That was one of the primary complaints I had from people that support the closure, but they think something with parking could be a little bit different, but I just didn't know the feasibility of that particular scenario. That's what was brought up.
So I've got input from a couple of the shop owners on the side streets, and I think it's a very good one, and I think it could be done really attractively, is to put up signs that point stores to direct people, to make them much more visible so that they know that they can go down the side streets for the stores. That was really some of their only complaints, was they felt that they were being kind of left out because everyone's wandering up and down in Copenhagen, and they would like to be people directed to their stores on the side streets, their restaurants and their stores.
Yeah, I agree with that, and I think we do try to remind businesses right now that we do have that encroachment permit, which also applies to signs, and some businesses have now taken advantage of that, to where we can actually place their sign on Copenhagen.
Yeah, down the street from their businesses. Yeah.
Right, exactly. Pointing to where that business is. We can probably chat with Scott and see if there's anything that we might want to do in Copenhagen, just a little bit more broad from, you know, city marketing perspective, to say there's additional shops here and there. And I think some of that, in addition to looking at, you know, the traffic concerns and ability to block off half a street safely, for example, if we were to consider that. I've also heard some businesses say open it up one way and have half the parking available, and have one way basically street over there. That's another, how do you actually safely do that? So all of those questions can be researched and answered, but I think some other complaints that I've heard is that the parking lot by visitor center is actually not filling up as much as others, just because people don't know how to get into it. And to me, that's another, you could put some additional signs on, parking this way without having to make more major changes. And then go ahead.
Sorry. Potentially, we could put a PCB up that basically says, COVID, wear a mask, blah, 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 and then switches to parking ahead to the right, over on, up on Mission a little bit, just back from that entrance to town. We could look at that as an option to try and help with that with both issues, like, hey, wear a mask, and also here's where you can park.
Right.
Oh, and the app. We mentioned it last meeting, but I know that was kind of a difficult meeting because it was midnight by the time we were chatting. We are working really, really hard on the app and hope to have that out here very, very soon. And we're hopeful that that will help with, with parking and with directing people to businesses, because as they walk by, we can literally grab them and be like, hey, just so you know, there's more businesses this way. We can push alerts to people who have the phone installed on, or have the app installed on their phone.
So in regards to the couple of potential parking spots that can be added in the right turn lane off of Alisal, I think if and when you want to say that this is probably a long-term closure for the next year, then it makes sense to repaint the curb and measure out the parking spots without just, if you just put out the cones, it will be quite confusing with the turn lane over there and the red curb. So
Painting over the turn lane, you're right.
Make it
Maybe that could be used for
parking
handicap,
spot.
temporary loading and unloading of handicap people.
That could be.
Or even keep it green.
I mean, yeah, and we are doing the parking study for a longer term solutions post COVID-19. Frankly, I have seen a lot of vacant parking spots, even on the busiest weekends right now. I haven't seen it fully filled up. And then we have some other areas, we can put more signage. For example, the parking lot here, it says, you're welcome to park, but it's kind of really small, hard to see.
This lot is always empty on the weekends.
Yeah, you can put something that's a little bit more visible. We have the same issue by the Vets Hall, to where it says police station this way, which is kind of scary. It doesn't necessarily say welcome to park here. And then we have the whole row where the buses used to park that are buses only, that could also become regular parking spots. So I don't think we have an immediate parking crisis here.
I don't see that either.
Even though it's crowded, we don't.
Right. So maybe it's just improvement on signage.
One other piece that we're working on is, obviously we carved out a little bit of money to help support local events, throughout the year. And it's obvious that it's unlikely that's going to happen anytime soon. So to try and help, one of the things we did during Yule Fest was we subsidized buses for, the Santa Ynez Valley Transit. We subsidized those buses for Yule Fest. So anybody with a ticket to the drone show was able to take that bus. And the ridership numbers were actually much higher than any of us expected. So one of the things we're looking at doing is potentially subsidizing Santa Ynez Valley Transit, in the short term, to try and encourage folks to ride the mass transit or public transit into Solvang, both for the emissions reason and then also, for parking, and then, to allow folks from the valley to rediscover some of the new and exciting shops and restaurants in Solvang.
I've just got one more comment to add to this. I noticed on Mission, there was a couple of businesses that absorbed the parking, right, that normally would have supported them. Mm-hmm. And have you done any surveys from those businesses and or the visitors to see if maybe that could be something be done more permanently?
Are you referring to like Paula's?
I was trying not to use anybody's name, but
God bless him for doing that. He found a way to make money.
Well, yes, and I think
serve the guests.
It serves our priorities, which is safety first, right? And obviously, if it enhances the profitability of these stores, which normally would not be able to do so, that's great. And as long as the community accepts it, then we need to factor that into the parking study as we go forward. Maybe that's something we should consider.
I have to say, just to add a side note, but I had breakfast at Ellen's last week, and they put hay around the parking lot. And I actually liked that. It was kind of attractive.
It was really
fun.
smartly done. I
yeah.
agree. I've seen that in Buellton, and I'm really impressed with what they did out there.
But I think the Paulas, those are probably safer for traffic because those things weigh a ton. They're filled with water. And you'd have to go in pretty fast to make a dent in those.
Right. I'd like to see us review that for possible changes. And again, kudos to Santa Barbara. I don't know if you guys have been down to Lower State, but they've done an amazing job. And during the weekends, it's a really fun place to go and visit. And I think we can do something similar here in Solvang.
Cool. Thanks, Scott.
Are there, excuse me, are there any other questions? Or Scott, with the current items we have on Copenhagen, I know some got returned just recently, but what's the ongoing cost of what we do have rented?
About $2,200 a week.
It's still pretty high.
Can't we just buy this equipment?
And that was my next question is I mean, what I hate to buy things that I'm hearing complaints about all day long about how they don't like the looks of it. So what is out there and available that might fit a little bit better here, and cost options? And I mean, is there any feedback you can give us regarding that?
Yeah, I mean, we can certainly look. I mean, we've been in the same boat where, you know, this was meant to be for 4 weeks. So we sort of, now that it's not, it's tough to switch gears and see what's there. So that's certainly a direction we can go and see what it costs to purchase. You know, the argument then is, well, then what do we purchase? Because, you know, it needs to be on trend and on brand and, you know, what's right for Solvang. And I think that those conversations only kind of almost have to split so that you can have your BDC and long-term kind of design plan, and then something short just to get out from underneath the $8,500 a month in rental cost, you know, in the short term. So we do have a quote for things like, we're slowly getting quotes for things we're renting now that it looks like longer term, right? So Marburg, you know, was kind enough to go out and buy those stand-up, you know, hand sanitizer things and then rent them to the city. But our carry costs on those, has, you know, again, the break-even point on that was like 2 months, and we've had them for 4 now. So we do have a quote to replace those. We have a quote to replace the fence, the white fence, and then, you know, just trying to find tables and chairs has been challenging. But you know, we really, before we went down that path too far, we really wanted to understand from the council what direction you gave, you know, what direction you had for Copenhagen, whether it's something that you wanted to just, you know, let's tear it down, reopen it, and you know, do an encroachment business by business, or if it's something that we want to, you know, if that experiment is something we want to continue, and if we're only continuing it for 3 months, then renting maybe makes sense. If we're going to continue it, you know, through December, then, you know, we kind of have to have an end date, which I know is impossible with COVID, but we almost have to have an end date in order to understand how to model the cost versus rent thing. You know, and then again, for us, you know, we want to, it's exceeded what we originally intended. So we want to make sure that we're respectful of the process with the city.
Okay. Are there any other questions of the staff report? With that, we'll go to public comment.
I don't believe we have any in-person public comment. Is there anybody online? I see C or GD raised hand. Whoever has the initials GD, you have your hand raised. Would you like to speak? Anybody on the phone would like to speak? If so, unmute yourself. Seeing none.
Okay. With that, we'll take it back to the council. Who'd like to start?
He speaks. Yeah, sometimes. I think we should take the money and instead of worrying about parking and transit and getting people there and all these other things, and just keep, obviously keep Copenhagen open, but make it even nicer and beautify it even more. And I think the steering committee should get together and discuss those plans and come up with great ideas that we could make Copenhagen even more inviting, with more things and everything, obviously taking into account the cost. But I think it's a great idea to obviously keep it open at least through December. I think we have to at this point.
Chris?
I agree. Unfortunately, we're put in a position where we have to make the best of a bad situation, and I think that's the right direction to go, so I support him fully. I also am curious, what can we do for Yule Fest? Because it's one of the bright moments of, in terms of our community. Can we do something on a limited basis?
Same with Danish Days.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Danish Days too.
I kind of think at this point, it doesn't even merit discussion, because we have no idea where we'll be in like 1 month or 2 months.
5 years.
Change every day. They come out with something new. They change it. So at this time, I think the focus should be.
I guess what I'm asking is for them to go ahead and do some kind of rough planning. It's possible that
within the guidelines,
yeah,
something fun and something special.
Right.
Okay, that's your job, Scott. Thanks.
Our team's working on some ideas for both a celebration of Solvang in the month of September, and then something Christmas related in December.
Karen?
No, I have no comment. I think everyone's made some very, very good suggestions.
Okay. I mean, I feel the same thing. I just think that we have a little bit of a messaging issue and education issue. I took the time to meet with some of the merchants out on the at the Solvang Park, and they all pretty much started with "we all hate the closure," and left with "no, we don't want it to close," or open, whatever you call it.
Well, Lions is a great example.
Yeah. So there's issues, and the main thing is just trying to explain to everyone that this is our only real chance to give a lot of businesses a fighting chance to survive.
And because they can go to those restaurants, they're going to stay in a hotel probably.
Yeah. So
if they're coming up from LA, so.
And we don't know how long this will go on for. It'll probably go on. Everything I'm hearing seems to indicate it's going to go on for quite some time. But I think the main thing we have to deal with here is making sure that message gets out there, make sure people understand the challenges that we face here. Obviously, budget constraints. Our job isn't, as a city council, is not just to take care of Copenhagen. We have other things to take care of. We have residents to serve. We have other businesses in Solvang to serve. So I'd hate to watch too much money and city resources go all down towards one thing. So I think people just need to understand that we have limits with what we can and can't do.
A point exactly on that is if we had a time frame for some of these wineries and some of these restaurants, and we said, hey, this is for sure going to go through December, that may inspire them to spend a little bit of money to beautify and make it nicer, make it classier, kind of like they've done over on Mission. I don't know if you guys have seen Succulent, and some of these other places are really doing a fantastic job. If we can give them some of these guarantees on a time frame, we could get them to invest a little bit of money. So like you said, so the city could put money.
And that was my point exactly. Once people understand, for example, the Mission examples that Dan was just mentioning, they're pouring a lot of money into it, but they're getting, they're getting something permanent. So they know that they can invest in that. And it's really hard to tell a business to go invest a bunch of money in something that at the whim the next day we could just say, oh, we'll just take that away.
Exactly. And do you want to get that? Exactly, because, for example, even with outdoor seating, this reminds me of church. Even with outdoor seating, they're dealing at a less than 100% capacity, and then you're asking them to spend money on their structures. It's a tough call right now. Now, Succulent, God bless them, they did a great job, and it looks great.
And the ones that are doing it are realizing that they can get near full capacity by investing in outdoor type things, and then realizing that hopefully when things go back to normal, whatever day or year that is, that they're going to benefit long term from that investment there.
Better to be here than in Denver.
If it's Copenhagen and asking businesses to put money out on Copenhagen, they're going to have a hard time when they're already struggling to go put money out in Copenhagen for something that tonight we could all just say, oh, let's just pull it up because we, feel like it. So I think we got to come up with some kind of plan to present to the community to give them some security in at least a minimum amount of time that we might be looking at here, so they have something to base their decisions off of. I think we probably should look into cost options because we need to know, people also need to understand that the city's still hemorrhaging itself. So, we can't just go blow out millions of dollars and throw down cobblestone streets and do all kinds of great fancy things. So, everyone has to find a way to work together to survive through this, and that's really where I just hope people come together for actually getting through this. But I think that needs to be that needs to be its own agenda item, perhaps on the next meeting. We have some feedback here.
From residents.
We need to know cost options. What are we really signing up for? What's the current burn rate on the rented items that we currently have? If we're going to base it on at least a 6-month, or through the end of the year kind of pro forma, then let's look at what that cost is for renting the stuff that people say they don't like right now versus buying what may or may not be available today. We have to look at what's actually available today, and that's the other struggle there too, because this isn't just normal times where we spec something out and plan for it and go buy exactly what we want. Exactly what we might want might not be available today. Pretty much every events company is going under, and we're taking Scott and hanging him upside down by his feet right now and shaking every last penny we can get out of him. So I'm not sure how long until we exhaust him, but but just some things to think about. And I just think that should, some of those items need to come in a proper staff report and be put on the agenda so that people can come in and talk about it and be informed on what's going on here.
And get feedback from the merchants.
And get more feedback from the merchants.
So may I ask a tiny self-serving question?
Mm-hmm.
Would there be support for the city manager to be, at least for the next 2 weeks, to be able to, within her purchasing power, at least absorb the rental costs? Or, because I'm sort of on the hook while we make decisions, while you make decisions.
Mm-hmm. Well, just cut IDK's contract, and then you can use that money to rent the stuff in Copenhagen for the next 2 months.
Ouch.
No, we appreciate you, Scott.
Yeah, I think it can be discussed.
I certainly support.
Yeah, no,
especially if we're thinking long, shutting things down through the end of the year. There's got to be some kind of.
Just ripping things up, that'd be haphazard. I think we need to just absorb what that cost is. I think IDK's already gone, above and beyond the Call of Duty here. So I think while we figure out what the next step is, I think we should take on that burden. But we should be really looking at what that cost is and bringing that back in the next meeting so we can all come to some kind of conclusion.
May I ask you, remembering another time that something like this happened back, please actually take a motion and approve that tonight.
Yes.
And I think the request is to allow the city manager within her purchasing to take over the temporary rental until you have taken formal action at your next meeting.
Yeah.
So I guess one of the reasons we came here today without fully fleshing out all the numbers, but we have kind of the rough costs of $8,300 a week. If we were able to find something before Brandon and Design Committee actually creates a design for a longer term, say if this was to go on for a year, which would be a more substantial item, if we get lucky to get some auction items or whatever that's pretty cheap within my spending authority that we know we're gonna basically be able to recoup within 2 months. Is that something that I just don't want to spend another 2 weeks doing a report if we get the good option to get furniture that will last us for the next 3 months.
Jump on it.
So if we can just
The
have
only
that as an
concern I
option.
have is right now with the amount of drama over certain things, is anything we do, it's gonna all of a sudden be accused that it's, you know, some nefarious, terrible thing. If we, if we just find, whatever that is, you know, let's put together a staff report, let's put together the cost. If something comes up in the meantime, you know, we can simply call a special meeting over it. I don't know what kind of cost we're even talking about.
Well, you also have
here, but-
authority and certain parameters.
Up to 30,000.
Yes.
So it's, you know, 2-3
But I
months
imagine
worth
this
of
stuff
rental.
would probably cost more than.
And I think if it's more about supply, but we're not talking that much furniture. I mean, we're basically talking more of the common areas, really, that need to be
Yeah, and
replaced.
I think in the super short term, I think, you know, replacing the hand sanitizer stations. I mean, we're renting, I think those are costing over they might even be $1,200 a week right now just for the hand sanitizer stations that are around town. So, you know, we got a quote to buy those for, I think, $138 per unit. And then, you know, we can locally source the stuff to fill it and, you know, engage city staff to fill them to get out from underneath that. So I think things like that, where there's no argument that there's a need for the hand sanitizer stations around town. And then aesthetically, you know, they are what
Right.
they are.
And that's a cost that's already been borne by the city, so it's just within our management of the budget and basically like public works.
No, I understand that stuff.
sanitizing.
And the reason, and we couldn't even buy them before.
Right, now they're available.
Basically impossible to even get hand sanitizer, which. You
But
know,
also, everybody I know carries one of these
Mhm.
with them in their car or in their purse. Everybody's got has kind of gotten crazy about it.
Like, I think by creating some certainty here, like Daniel was describing, would it probably encourage many of the retailers and restaurants to maybe actually invest in some kind of outdoor furniture and platform and shrubbery to beautify their particular store. It's not up to the city to make, you know, to help them achieve that. They need to step up and do it themselves. But they would, now that they know that we're going to keep this potentially closed for the rest of the day, they can make that decision on their own. Again, I point to what they're doing in Lower State Street, Santa Barbara. They've done an amazing job of taking a single block and turning it into a really wonderful, fun environment. So I encourage everybody to go look at that.
And I think those are some of the challenges we have to work with right now, because we're saying the same thing, but you have, for example, if we just give them more of a stated period of time and let the businesses just go buy whatever they want to put out there, then you're going to end up with stuff, you know, individualized, but probably a lot of complaints about certain things that, you know, people don't like, or that it's off-brand, or, you know, whatever it is. Or you more or less come up with what the standards are and have some kind of standard around it to try to keep things more on brand and consistent. It's just what are the results that you're looking for. But I think, again, those are all things that need to be talked about in conjunction with cost and timing and branding and things like that. So, but it's a big deal, because the second you start going down, you know, everyone just ad hoc does whatever they want to do.
You're going to get a big discrepancy.
We saw how much drama there was over a merchant having some, you know, trinkets on a table in Solvang. So you're talking about now letting the merchants go just buy whatever they want to do. I see a whole huge slew of problems there. So, yeah. And I don't think that's what the vision is here. And again, we're all just trying to react with the times that we have. But, you know, whatever we can do to stay somewhat on brand and coming out with something that looks nice, I think is obviously desirable.
So one question of clarification then. When we are talking, you know, I think we've talked before, at least briefly, about potentially the branding and design committee jumping in when they're onboarded. Obviously, it will take some period of time for that to happen, for them to begin the work. I mean, I can see that they could potentially create specific guidelines that the businesses then can follow for that brand. But as far as if we're coming back with a report at, say, the next meeting, are you looking for IDK, the steering committee, the staff to come up with some kind of intermediary guidelines while we work on the BDC guidelines, or what is your vision there?
I mean, I think that a lot of these things can be discussed in parallel. We have For example, just even cost options around furniture, it's what's available. So is it going to be more of a model where we go out and find out what's available, we come up with some different options for purchase, and the city more or less functions as the purchasing agent for these things, but then the businesses that need to start paying for what's in front of their stores, are we just going to be footing the bills on all of these things?
Yeah.
You talked about giving businesses some time so they can decide, that's actually worthwhile for them to make somewhat of a investment. What is that? What does that look like? What do you want them investing in? Are they, and again, are we coming up with what that is? And then people start purchasing. I mean, even all the little pergolas that are out there with the city stuff, all that stuff costs money. I believe there are some merchants that actually approached IDK and was able to buy additional ones that went in there, but all the other businesses just so far have had them provided to them. Are we gonna rent some of these things out to recoup cost? Are we paying full burden? Like, what is that trip level? What is this council comfortable with? And I think those are hard things for anyone even to answer here, when I don't think anyone really has any clarity around cost or what they're actually even signing up for right now. But that's why I wanted to get more transparency around that and have that be, presented more in a staff report. Now that I think you have consensus here from the council that we're open to keeping Copenhagen open,
Right.
for long term.
And I think it's kind of a similar question that, we have to face every time there's an encroachment permit that comes in, is how do we treat not only Copenhagen, that's obviously a very important piece for marketing, but with businesses just being allowed right now to expand onto streets, taking up parking in other places, also having different aesthetics as they expand. Perhaps we can discuss that at the next agenda as well, just because it's a similar type of question.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it'd be great to get the steering. I don't know if the steering committee exists. If they meet, I have no idea. But to get their opinion on the design and get some input from them as well. That's kind of why we put that whole thing together, was to get their information. So get their information as well as putting together this report is going to help us out a lot to understand what they're looking for and what they want. And then, we got to do a full cost analysis to see what the heck we're going to do. We can't keep paying for this.
We should hire a consultant.
And obviously, I think it's a issue that people are passionate about. So this might attract more people willing to serve in that capacity for creating those guidelines around Copenhagen.
Sure, and I think our steering committee could be the ground force in getting businesses to buy into paying for their pergolas and their tables and their chairs.
Yeah, at least we can find out if they are willing, or if they want to, or if they want to,
Yeah. I get a little concerned about things going on for too long where we're paying for everything and we're not, again, we still have residents to take care of, and there are other businesses in Solvang besides ones on Copenhagen. So there's at some point there's like it kind of feels like gift of public funds issue or something like that. So we got to figure out how to recoup from the disaster and then get things on the right track.
Balance the need for tourist dollars versus the desire of residents.
Yeah. So are we good with maybe at the next meeting we have a staff report put together that addresses some of these things and brings more of that to light so we can make a more concrete decision?
Yes.
Did you want us to make a motion regarding the next?
I'm gonna make a motion right now, but I just want to make sure we had consensus first. And then I think the other item was this BDC thing about trying to put a little steering committee together around this. Is that something we?
So the opening at the BDC recruitment is now open.
Okay.
As I mentioned earlier, the instructions are online on the front page. The initial recruitment as a priority deadline is August 17th. So I would hope to bring applications by August 24th. And if there's not enough applicants, then we would extend.
Okay. So I think the appropriate motion for consideration would be move that for the next council meeting, we'll have a agenda item regarding Copenhagen with all the feedback you received tonight with what we're looking for. You have the BDC thing going, and we'll also move to approve the city manager to approve the additional cost for the rental items while we figure out what we're doing, and to come back with a budget adjustment. And then number 3, what was number 3? There was one more I was missing.
I'm not sure if it's the one you had in mind, but I think that one of the things that was requested was just confirming the city manager's authority if opportunities arise to purchase things that instead are being rented right now, that she could use her existing authority to purchase those things in the meantime.
Which we wouldn't need a motion for that, would we?
Well,
Mr. Mayor, Councilman Clark, I'm just remembering, and I've had so many people say there must be secret meetings going on and things must be being approved all the time.
I want to go to those.
And I want to go to them too. I haven't been to one yet, but it just seems like here's another one of those great opportunities instead to let the public know, no, there aren't secret meetings going on all the time during the week at which this stuff happens, and you're actually authorizing your city manager to use her existing authority in that instance.
Right, and I think in the near future, we could also put on the future agenda something that I was going to bring to you before COVID-19 happened, but the purchasing and budgeting policies and guidelines that really kind of clarify a lot of this stuff. That's
good. Okay.
But what my concern is, again, about, whatever this council wants to do, fine, but my concern is by authorizing just the purchase of things to throw down Copenhagen, no one here knows what that may or may not look like. And the merchants on Copenhagen don't know what it looks like. Nobody knows what it looks like. You're also talking about having a steering committee to put together what that looks like on Copenhagen. So in the meantime, if you go buy all that stuff,
I agree.
what's the point of anything else? And the only thing that we're going to get is a bunch of bad PR with people screaming, yelling that we went and bought the worst thing we could ever find.
Let's just
no matter what it is.
Yeah, no matter what it is. Yeah.
Let's just rent for the next 2 weeks, get the report, and then we can decide.
I don't think renting in the meantime is going to kill us. I'd rather just wait and try to at least make the best purchase that we can. And as time goes by, hopefully more things become available.
Okay.
That's
a long motion.
Yeah, well, I think we went back into discussion a little bit, but so anyway, so I'll go back to my original one. We'll move that we have an agenda item at the next meeting. You've heard our feedback and concerns. Those will be pumped into that staff report. You'll move forward with the BDC items, and we authorize the city manager to move forward with the rental cost for the items currently there, moving that out of the IDK area while we bring this back and decide what we're going to do next.
I'll second the motion.
It's been seconded.
Mayor Pro Tem Clark,
Yes.
Councilmember DeJarnius,
Yes.
Councilmember Johnson,
Yes.
Councilmember Waite,
Yes.
Mayor Toussaint.
Yes.
Passes 5-0.
Item number 7.
Want to make a motion to go past the 9:30 mark?
Are we there now?
Almost.
All right, so I'll make a motion that we continue the meeting past 9:30.
Second the motion.
It's been seconded by someone.
Mayor Pro Tem Clark,
Yes.
Councilmember DeJarnius,
Yes.
Councilmember Johnson,
Yes.
Councilmember Waite,
Yes.
Mayor Toussaint.
Yes.
5-0.
Item number 7, media and public relations update.
Oops. So this would be Anna's report. Anna, you with us?
Yes, I am. Zena, do you have my slides? You do? Okay, good.
No, you would be actually, if you can share your screen, that'd be great.
I don't know if I can. I'll try. Well, actually, before I go into that, I just want to give a little quick explanation into some of this and why I'm even bothering to make you guys sit through this. One of the reasons that I want you to start to see these things on a somewhat monthly basis are for a few reasons, actually. I'd like to have you become accustomed to seeing what the news is covering on the topic of Solvang, either on the city side or the tourism side. And there is obviously often an overlap there, but also to show you some of the topics which the news tends to pick up on more so than other topics. And then to help you better understand what any reports like this actually mean, especially when you're looking at what your own efforts have produced. And by that, I mean that I could pull a report of every piece of news coverage which mentions the word Solvang within the past 7 days. But if I reported on that to you as, in quotes, here's our Solvang media coverage from the past week. It wouldn't mean that we actually had anything to do with most of that coverage. And we might not have even lifted a finger for whatever showed up in that report. Although it's fine to report on that type of coverage, it should be noted somewhere which pieces might have been as a result of a specific PR firm or a marketing firm or a DMO, or even when the poor mayor had to spend a whole day with a reporter, versus us not having to do anything because something was written up on the Alisal and it happens to mention that its location isn't Solvang. And on that note, also news coming out of our individual businesses is often very valuable. And that is something that we need to really be looking at on both the city and the tourism side, because like Olson's 50th anniversary, which is happening in the next week, that's something that we can often help those businesses blow up a bit more in terms of news. So let me see if I can actually share this. Okay, can you all see this now?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm going to keep it in this view just so I can see my slides on the side. So I'm going to go through this very quickly. This was May. I'm 2 months delayed now, just because we've had such long meetings the past few times. So the May coverage report, we had a very good month city-wise in May. We had about 100 pieces of city-related coverage that I was tracking. And then of those clips, we had about 47 to 50 of those were TV clips. Then we had a couple of radio interviews that Scott did for us that were a crossover between tourism and city related. Again, you know, at that point in time, everybody was turning their attention to tourism destinations and how they were being affected by COVID, which is still happening. But the stories now are a little bit different than they were at that point. So at that time, we had an LA Times article that had come out in April. And in May, it was still getting syndicated and picked up by other publications. And then in May, we also had another Solvang mention in a different LA Times article that was still about Solvang, or still included Solvang in the reopening, and the mayor was quoted in that second article as well. So when things like that hit in these big papers, again, they get syndicated, they get picked up in all these other places. So we get all that fabulous extra bonus exposure from these pieces. So again, trying to put some sort of publicity value on the pieces that I was tracking, the 100 or so city-related pieces in May, because we had big hits, came out to about $190,000 just for May alone. And all of that Los Angeles Times love accounted for about $77,000 of that.
What were those pieces again?
All of those, the LA Times pieces?
Yeah, in April, May.
Okay, so the first one was the one where you actually spent time with Kevin.
Oh, that's
And
right.
that
We
was
did that
about-
walk. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, and then the second one was a bigger picture. I think it highlighted 3 different towns. And I might have a little slide of that in the next couple slides, a little picture. And that one you were quoted in. Solvang was thrown in there. It was actually about another town, a different destination in California, but they included Solvang in that again.
And I believe LA Times, they're talking about possibly doing another follow-up piece. Has anyone followed up with them about that?
Yes, yeah, I keep in touch with Kevin.
Okay, perfect.
He comes up here on his own, so I don't even have to keep in touch with him really on it. He does it on his own. Okay, where was I? So then down on this slide, it's just looking at, again, some of the places that picked up the news in print, and then we have all this TV coverage. And again, that can be like the same segment pretty much, but then each of the trios of stations in Santa Barbara, the trio of stations, each will pick it up multiple times a day, or it'll be slightly different mention. So here are some of their May highlights. So there's that LA Times over on the lower left-hand corner there, California's tourism-dependent towns cautiously prepare for new marketing for reopening. That was the article that really wasn't about Solvang, but we did get our mention in there with a quote from you, Mayor. Also in May, the food story, the fact that the city and IDK were helping so much with the Vets Hall food distribution, that was a very good news topic for us. It's a positive one. I slipped us into 2 different eater things. So this article was, could California's Central Coast lead the way for the future of local food tourism? That did very well. It talked about what Solvang was doing on the tourism side, but also crossover with the city, in that at that point we had just closed Copenhagen. So it was talking about our enhanced efforts to help our food businesses and winery businesses cope with what was going on with the closures. And then the second one came out, and Eater okay, so in June now, fewer TV clips. Again, we were pushing out fewer pieces of news coverage in June. And again, and as I've mentioned in the past, and it says it right here, when I'm counting these pieces of city-related coverage, I'm not giving you any kind of tracking results on anything that has to do with any of the rallies. I'm not doing anything in here. I'm not including in here anything that has to do with any of the recall, because I didn't exactly go start the recall petition on my own just to make some news. So these are just things that we are actually proactively involved in some way. So again, temporary Copenhagen Drive closure in June accounted for approximately 68% of the media coverage that was tracked, and we are still getting queries about that. I got another photo inquiry today for the Copenhagen Closure from Westways magazine for an upcoming piece. So people were very interested in the fact that we were doing that. And then of course the Betts Hall, that's not necessarily always positive news, or, you know, that's definitely divisive, but we did get quite a bit of coverage based on the workshops that were run. And then there was that interview with Ed St. George that the local papers did, which was posted to YouTube. So again, publicity value on those pieces of coverage that I was tracking for June, 66,500. Fewer TV spots, all different places over here in print, radio. And then some of the highlights again. So these on the lower left-hand side, the LA Times, the coronavirus crisis in visuals, is something that runs regularly in the LA Times, and Solvang's headlines show up in that quite a bit, and that gets pushed out through newsletter to LA Times subscribers, digital subscribers, and also sits on their site. So that's just, again, some love that we keep getting without our having to keep going back out and doing something. That's like our pieces that keep going out there. And sometimes it even picks up on our local news pieces. On the right-hand side, that was a good piece, but it was about the workshops for the development. Over here on the lower left-hand side, again, Copenhagen Closure, Copenhagen Closure, Copenhagen Closure. It is kind of rare that SLO will report on Solvang news. So the fact that the New Times actually included us in an article was nice. Copenhagen Closure, Copenhagen Closure. And over here is the quote that Scott was referring to, which I will read as well, which was just a phenomenal quote. And this was in the SYV news. So this was a reporter, not necessarily that we told her to do this. She went out and interviewed people on the street at the beginning of the Copenhagen Closure. And this particular resident of Calabasas said, there is nothing like this in Calabasas. As he said, seated at a new parklet structure with his 7-year-old who was polishing off serving of fries and chicken strips. Being outside's a good idea. Who knows how long this pandemic is going to take? Solvang is usually a stop on the way to somewhere else, but now that I'm looking at this and how he, his son, likes this, we're going to get back out and stay the night. I didn't think there would be so much going on here. So I definitely think that if we can get this to work out, the Copenhagen Closure is attracting a different, a new type of tourist. So then what I'm starting to segue back into right now, I'm pulling like triple duty at the moment, are some of the tourism PR and marketing side of things. So as some of that starts to show back up, I am including some different things here just to kind of show you this is something we had nothing to do with, and this is something that we did. One of the hot topics these days, actually, let me skip ahead one slide, is this Europe. If you look in the lower right-hand side here of this slide, Europe and America, huge right now, because people are aware of Solvang and because they're picking up other articles that people have already included Solvang in about places in the US that are like going to Europe, since we can't go to Europe at the moment. Solvang is getting included in all of these great places with phenomenal coverage. And again, I didn't go out and say to this person who wrote this article, hey, why don't you include Solvang in this? This is something that's just happening and it's catching on like wildfire. So that is definitely helping things. Also over here, it's 20 small, beautiful towns, beautiful small towns. We're seeing a lot of articles with Solvang showing up that are along that same line. Fairy tale towns, small towns, charming towns. The one on the right, small market meetings, we did have something to do with. That was an article that I was working on with this publication. It was kind of at the beginning of COVID. So right now, unfortunately, that article is not entirely accurate because of things that have happened since, but it was still pushing the small market meetings angle, like a place for smaller meetings and groups to come from for things when everything opens back up. Back to the slide on the lower left. Sometimes we get lucky and we get some really cool things. So REI, as most of you probably know, it's an outdoor outfitter. They have this co-op journal that their members receive as a print publication, really pretty glossy magazine that's produced by Hearst. And they also have a digital counterpart to that. And while Solvang is not always included on California road trips or anything to do with national parks, we actually did get included in this piece, which was really nice. And that was something that I was working on before COVID even hit. So that finally published. And then again, travel and leisure, visit one of these 8 Western US destinations for a taste of traveling abroad. And these articles then get picked up by other conglomerate sites like MSN. And then again over here, LA Times, can't go to Europe. You can find the Eiffel Tower, London Bridge, and more in the US. He mentions Solvang, and his article got picked up all over the place. So that particular article in its exact form has been syndicated like crazy going into July. So July's numbers are going to be really interesting to watch as well. And that is all that I have right now. Any questions?
I do.
Sure.
Do we know what occupancy is for hotels right now?
I don't have a master number. IDK Angie, who's in town now, as Scott mentioned, from Thursday through Sunday, she's calling the hotels each week on Thursday, each of the Solvang hotels, and charting. So we have an Excel chart with the past 3 or 4 weeks of numbers. It is overall, by looking at the numbers individually, I would say that it has dropped the past 2 weeks. Some hotels are holding steady though. So it's really interesting to look at which properties are kind of holding steady and which ones are not. Definitely just visually, I'm noticing that there are clearly people in town and the streets are busy on the weekends. So again, it would point to that we're definitely getting day trippers and not necessarily overnight stays right now. And I can also attribute some of that to the fact that overall, I think people are becoming more frightened of travel in the past couple of weeks. Again, they're starting to tighten back up. And staying in hotels, we're seeing the RVs, obviously Flying Flags is packed to the gills. So people are camping, they're staying in their own RVs, but not necessarily as willing to stay in a hotel.
Okay, thanks, Anna.
Are there any questions of the staff report? Okay, go to public comment. Is there any public comment on this item?
Do we have anybody in public comment? Raise your hand. See none.
Okay, seeing none, we'll take it back to the council. Is there any discussion on this item? Nope. Looks pretty straightforward. Receive and file report. I don't know if we even need a motion for that.
Nope.
Thank you.
Thank you, Anna.
Thank you, Anna. Thank you, Scott.
You're welcome.
Item number 8, update on planning and building processes and procedures.
All right, so this is really meant to be.
Does this council have gas to keep going?
Yeah,
or?
the last 2 items are not urgent, so it's up to the council if you want to continue. But this item is really more informational to give an update on where we are with planning, community development, and building. I think there is, it's been an area where there is a lot of changes that have been made and even more changes to be made. So this is kind of a comprehensive quick update on where we are. The only item for you to take a motion on would be whether or not you want to extend the amnesty program through the end of December, which is the staff's recommendation. The rest of it is really just informational, and you can provide your general direction if you see any items of interest. So prior to COVID-19, our both building and planning operations were really kind of old school, old style, completely paper-based with very minimal use for just taking in payments and issuing a permit number in a very outdated software. So, and we've also discovered that there was no internal written policies and procedures, which made it harder as a discovery stage in making improvements to that department. And we've also found that the municipal code was inconsistently interpreted at times. Since COVID-19 happened, we made modifications to the staffing levels. Obviously, there was an immediate need to go from paper-based way of doing things to becoming remote. So we have by now created an intermediary process on how we process things by email and the web. It's not quite the end of the road yet, but we're making it do. We've also gone to an operation with reduced hours to where we only service by appointment or through the email or the web, and we are populating all the forms and instructions, updating the website. A lot of it has been done, but we'll continue to make clarifications there in the intermediary process right now. And we also, with the limited hours, have gone to a fully contracted out model to where we have a planning consultant, and then we have our contract for building services with Wildan, which is our building official and our building inspector. And they have worked out the procedures to where we're still not seeing, we have some backlog right now because we've gone through this transition. It took a little bit of time to work through this transition of moving into COVID-19 world. But they're working through their backlog, and we're seeing that in the intermediary time, we can continue to service that function with just the limited hours of 1 or 2 days a week in the office for them. Going forward, I think we'll be able to actually service the community once we implement the software on unlimited hours or unlimited days, to where the consultants would be able to actually process everything remotely, which will still be a cost-effective way of doing things. And we are also finding that for the types of projects that are coming through, we really need that level of expertise for majority of the hours that are at that planner level or the building official level. So the implementation that we are about halfway through right now is of the Dude Solutions. Just to remind everybody of where it is, it's really going to be a fully automated system that houses all of the information for each particular parcel all over the city of Solvang, to where all permits, all licenses for that license will be attached to that address. It will all be very efficient, online, and most of all, it will create an ability for self-service. I think most of the time that we spend right now with customers for building planning is really just getting back and forth with them on email, trying to explain what the processes are, correcting forms, them just asking questions and where things are in the process. And this type of software would really resolve most of those problems. So we're hoping that this will be implemented within the next 3 to 4 months, and then we'll see a much different level of service. Just wanted to mention that in working with our planning consultant from Urban Concepts, we've discussed the intermediary step that could help us with the community engagement and given an early look for more significant projects, to where we can process those projects through a preliminary application process, to where we get just enough information from the applicant to be able to take a look at the consistency with the current general and zoning provisions, the water, wastewater capabilities, public works concerns, around through fire department and building department, and allow for that early community input. So we're proposing that when a large significant project comes in, we could take it directly to the planning commission, have that in a public hearing, run it through that analysis, then potentially take it to the city council before the developer spends all the money on actually developing specific plans that they would have to do for a full application and submittal of that project. We've talked about this before, but Bringing and Design Committee is a committee that this council has formed. By a resolution, we would be coming to the council with an update to an ordinance to actually codify this new committee. We have found through the research that the Board of Architectural Review, BAR, was actually not codified in the code, and the terms of this recruitment, right now the recruitment is open through August 17th as a priority deadline. The appointment of the committee members would be through December 31, 2020. And there's specific qualifications that are more specific than they used to be for the BAR that specifically talk to people's qualifications to serve on this committee. And it's, I'll just read this language if anybody's listening and interested in applying, but the committee members shall have demonstrated interest in and knowledge of architectural history, architecture, local history, or fields related to historic preservation, construction, planning, geography, landscape, architecture, urban design, Danish culture, arts, or real estate. And also, I think an important change that used to be kind of a difficulty before in finding members for the BAR is that this is not restricted to residents of Solvang, and to the extent feasible, all members shall be residents of Santa Ynez Valley. So Santa Ynez Valley is the first priority, but this is actually a little bit more open if there's not enough applicants in the Santa Ynez Valley. And then just—
Has anyone expressed interest yet in the—
Not as of yet. So the last, actually, there's one more after this, but back to the general plan update. As you know, you have adopted in this financial plan, and it's planned for the first fiscal year of the financial plan, is to go through the very important process of the general plan update. The City of Solvang has not engaged in this process in a long time. As you can see, the elements that you're looking at updating are land use element, which was last updated in 2008. Circulation, which will include parking element, was also updated in 2008. Housing element had an update in 2015. Design element is from 1988. Open space, conservation, noise, and safety elements, those were also updated between 2008 and 2015. But one of the things that would be really beneficial throughout this process is that, as you can see, these elements were updated at very different times, so there hasn't been a comprehensive look for the general plan update in quite a while. So the recommended practice would be to have a more comprehensive update to all the elements in the general plan overall, and also to do it every 10 years at least. So we're catching up with that, and the vision with this RFP and the proposal and the scope of work is that this is not just an exercise for a planner. This is really more looking for a firm that will be able to lead and work with the City of Solvang and the community in that visioning process to kind of see what the Solvang wants to be over the next 10 years, because we would be talking about that vision over the 10 years that we would then implement through these different elements. And then the last one is the one that you can take an action on today. If you remember, in actually at the end of 2019, you established an amnesty program, which was good through June 30, 2020. There was not a lot of applicants into that program. We have about 4 or 5 in that program, but I think especially with the COVID-19 and limited resources on code compliance, you may want to consider for considerations of health and safety to make sure that people in the residential community and business community actually come to the city and go through the appropriate process of permitting on building side, that they come to us and we'll be able to, if you extend this amnesty program, address their permitting issues without penalties for unpermitted work. So my recommendation would be that you extend this program through December 31 and also make it continuous backdating to June 30 when it expired.
Okay.
That concludes my report.
Are there any questions of the staff report?
Public comment?
Okay, seeing none, we'll go to public comment. Do we have any public comment on this item?
Do you have public comment? Please raise your hand. See none.
Okay, take it back to the council for discussion and action. Who would like to start?
I'll start. I am so impressed. I campaigned on this, and I think several other members campaigned on this one in 2018. And to see this finally being done and realized is just fantastic. Kudos to our city manager and to our staff who've been working so hard on a tight budget to make these things happen. I think the city, the community is going to be much better served. The residents, the businesses, visitors, everything. I'm just so excited to see this happening. Thank you.
I agree. That's all I got.
Talk about the timing of it. COVID kind of forced it anyway.
Yeah.
We would have been even further behind.
I was almost going to say, maybe we just put a moratorium on it and then bring it back in a year but yeah, run until the end of the year, see if we get some help.
Oh, you're talking about the
If
amnesty.
people want some help, amnesty, I'm talking about, yeah. But good job.
When will the online software be implemented by?
I'm estimated 3 to 4 months. We're basically having to kind of do the discovery of as is in the processes because there was no written processes. So as we implement this, we're kind of putting the process together into a diagram, and then we'll look at that comprehensively, make adjustments for business process improvements, and then it will go live.
It's astonishing that we made it. You have to literally reinvent the wheel because it wasn't done for all these years, all these decades. This is fantastic. You're doing so much. This is our mantra: do more with less. You're making that happen.
So far, I think there's been more people than just 4 or so, but I think we've had some pretty substantial people brought into that. And one, we had a grocery store that was doing all kinds of remodel without any forms of permits or anything. I think that's a great example of how something like that was brought into that program, and then now they have a compliant project that's going to meet the health and safety standards that we all expect.
There was a few larger commercial projects that were brought in. I think that there hasn't been, or maybe we can do a little bit more outreach into the residential community to come into this.
Robert and I met with a group of realtors that were about the program where we talked to them all for about 2 hours or so.
Right, yeah.
But they all loved the program. The number one complaint that we received was just mistrust in coming into the amnesty program, and albeit maybe it's this administration today, but they all feel that they're going to go on some kind of retribution list for a future administration. So that's just a problem with how people feel that they've been treated over all the years, and what does it take to regain that trust back to where they feel comfortable coming in with those things. So
we can address that.
I don't know who's going to address that, but that just kind of is a shame that it's there, and a lot of people are just actually they want to come into it, but they're worried for other reasons. But that's what it is. That's the feedback that I received at that meeting.
So we want a motion for the amnesty?
Yeah, I'll receive and file the report and make the motion to extend the amnesty program through the remainder of the year, unless there's any other discussion on the item.
I'll second that.
It's been moved and seconded.
Mayor Pro Tem Clark?
Yes.
Councilmember DeJarnius?
Yes.
Councilmember Johnson?
Yes.
Councilmember Waite?
Yes.
Mayor Toussaint?
Yes.
5-0.
On to item number 9, delegation of voting delegates and alternates, League of California Cities.
Right, so this is just League of California Cities requires you to pass a resolution establishing a delegate from the council to be a voting member at the League of California Cities. The League's next conference is currently scheduled for October 7th through the 9th of 2020 in Long Beach, although there is a disclaimer that that may not be happening in person, in which case there may be alternative COVID-19 friendly remote options. So this item at this point is for you to just appoint the delegate from the council. That would be the voting member, and you can also appoint up to 2 alternatives.
Okay. Is there any public comment on this item?
I see no public.
I took public comment on the plan.
Yes, you did.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
There's nobody online.
And there's no one in the room?
Or awake.
Okay, we'll take it back to the council for discussion and action. I don't know if there's much to say on this one. I'll move that we appoint Robert Clark.
I know.
I'll second that.
Who is not
Oh, it's been
running
moved and
for
seconded. All right.
I win. I win. I'm
All right.
the only one that might be here in November. Gosh, I
Mayor
finally
Pro Tem
got appointed
Clark.
to something. This is so great. I worked really hard for
Congratulations, Robert.
this. Okay.
You've worked hard for this one.
Yes, I have. I've lobbied hard, too.
Lobbied hard.
Mayor Pro Tem Clark.
Yay.
Councilmember DeJurians.
Absolutely, yes.
Councilmember Johnson.
Yes.
Councilmember Waite.
Yes.
Mayor Toussaint.
I was thinking about saying no just for the fun of it, but
Yeah.
I guess I'll stick with yes.
All right. Passes 5-0.
All right. With that, we'll move on to item number 10, AB 1234 report out, council comments and requests. Again, I don't think that there are any events going on that the city might have paid for a council member to attend. Maybe a potential one in October if Robert
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
performs his duties. I doubt that'll happen. So nothing there. There's no comments. It's kind of late. We can. Karen? Okay.
I'm sure you all read in the paper that Tracy Beard was awarded the Congressional Woman of the Year Award. So I think she should be recognized for that and all of her hard work.
With a proclamation?
I think she should have a proclamation.
Okay.
I'll read the article on it.
I'll read the article. You can send the link out.
Yes, I will.
Perfect. See no
Am I
others?
to get more help for the work that she does at City Hall? Any updates on that?
We are working on the first steps. There's one of the positions that you authorized that requires conversations with the union, and the other position that's non-union is going to be advertised this week.
Perfect. So you're going through the motions. All right.
And I'd be happy to help with anything with IDK, going door to door on a weekend and talking to merchants. If anybody wants, I'm happy to help. That's all I got.
Perfect. With that, we're adjourned. I'll do that with you if we can drink wine while we do it.
Absolutely. It'd be fun.
We'll start at one end and wrap around and see if we're still